Welcome, everybody, to the 6 p.m. City Council meeting of October 22nd, 2019. Let the roll call reflect that all council members are present, with the exception of Vice Chair Jaberka, who has asked to be excused this evening. I've asked past Chair Heyer to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance this evening.
Please rise and repeat the pledge with me, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please consider joining us for a moment of silence. Thank you. The first item on our agenda is a recognition of Native American Heritage Month. We have asked Councilmember White to read that for us.
Thank you, Chair Nadolski. I am excited to read this proclamation. Declaring November 2019 Native American Heritage Month in Ogden City. Whereas, for millennia, before Europeans settled in North America, the native people of this continent flourished. From generation to generation, they handed down invaluable culture, knowledge, and rich traditions. Native Americans were the first to live in what is now Ogden. And whereas Native Americans have significantly shaped our country's character and culture, they were the first stewards of our environment and helped to build the very fabric of America. Our cultural heritage has been enriched immeasurably by their customs and traditions, with each tribe sharing wonderful portions of its unique history and character. And whereas Native Americans have also served this country with distinction, sharing their wealth of knowledge and talents. Many foods, medicines, and remedies that are used today were introduced by them, and they have made notable contributions in education, government, law, medicine, sports, art, the military, science, and literature. Their many contributions continue to enrich and strengthen our community, and whereas we cannot forget the long and unfortunate chapters of violence, discrimination, and deprivation Native Americans had to endure. For far too long, the heritage we honor today was disrespected and devalued. We cannot ignore these events or erase their consequences. But as we work together, we can learn from the lessons of our past and forge a brighter future. And whereas today we honor the legacy of Native Americans and celebrate their rich history, Native American Heritage Month is an opportunity for our community to learn about Native American culture and gain an awareness of the unique challenges Native people have faced and the ways in which they have worked to overcome these challenges. Now, therefore, the Ogden City Council and Mayor Michael P. Caldwell hereby proclaim November 2019 Native American Heritage Month in Ogden City. We recognize the profound influence of Native Americans and acknowledge the importance of their contributions throughout the greater Ogden community. We express our sincere appreciation for Weber State University's 14th Annual Native Symposium and for all others who are working to highlight and embrace Native cultures. And Chair, I would like to adopt this.
Make a motion.
I'd like to make a motion, thank you, to adopt this proclamation.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember White, seconded by Councilmember Lopez to adopt or approve this joint proclamation. This is a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. We're joined by Tashina Barber from Weber State University and some students, I hope. If you come up for a photo.
Start first.
Yeah.
And then just, you want to go down the...
Thanks for being
here.
Thank you.
Oh, yes.
Thank
yes,
you.
yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Don't forget the mayor.
Yeah. He's really the man to give a shake to.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Thank you. Appreciate your time. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for coming tonight.
Yeah, so if you could just hold it right here.
I'm just going to act tall.
Yeah, we don't need our steps today. That's weird.
It is kind of weird.
Is that normal?
My smile. Yeah, so if you want a few minutes to.
We're just going to introduce ourselves. Ya Ashe Tishina Barbara Yanishia to Hananishla, but Dani Bashishin, Ashi Hadasha Chedo, Kinsachini, Dashanala. What I've shared with you are my clans. I identify me as a Navajo woman. Thank you for the support that you all have provided us. Members of the American Indian Council are here and they'll share a little bit of information about themselves. But on behalf of myself and the Center for Multicultural Excellence, we really appreciate the recognition and the contributions and support that we've received from the Ogden City.
Yat Esh Amanda Jones Yanishia, Tabaha Nishle, Kinslit Chikni Bashishin, Bitani Dashache, Dot Lashti Dashanali. This is how I identify as a Diné Navajo woman, and I am the American Indian Senator at Weber State University, and I just want to say thank you.
Good evening, I'm Jeanette Jones. I'm from Fort McDowell, Arizona. I'm Yavapai in Oklahoma, Kickapoo. And I just want to thank you guys for the recognition and the support. And I'm proud to be part of the American Indian Council at Weber State.
Hello, my name is Nadina Delgado. I'm Timoke Tribe of Western Shoshone, originated from northeastern Nevada. I'm on my second year as president of American Indian Council at Weber State University. On behalf of Weber State, the Center for Multicultural Excellence, and American Indian Council, we extend our gratitude to the city's just recognizing Native people and our past and present. So thank you.
Thank you.
I want to thank you for speaking some of your native language. That was a real treat. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Sheena? Sorry, I want to second what Councilman Heyer said. And I just want to say also that since he made a comment, I've had an idea we teach ESL classes at the center where I work for Weber State, and we have taught Spanish classes before. And I've always had the idea to see if at some point we could teach some native languages to the community. And at some point, I'd like to get a hold of you and have a conversation about that. Okay. Well, sorry, would you mind coming?
Yeah,
because
thanks.
Sorry, you need to be on the microphone.
I should have brought the details, but during the Native Symposium on the 4th, which is a Monday, we will have a Native language workshop primarily geared towards Navajo. Each year we try to rotate the different tribes here in Utah to feature at this event. We are going to have a Navajo code talker coming on the 5th. It's an evening event, and we hope that a lot of our community members will be there to hear his narrative and his experience. The day before, I'm going all over the place here, but we will have that language workshop at 10 a.m. and it's going to be presented by a Navajo language instructor who works with the Davis School District Indian Education Program. Right. So there's some movement there, but I have also taught that class, so I'll definitely stay connected to see what we can do to do.
When is the symposium again?
There is the workshop for the language component on the 4th, which is a Monday. The following day in the evening, on the 5th, on Tuesday evening, is the keynote speaker, Peter McDonald Sr., who is a former Navajo code talker. So that will be taking place in a few weeks from now.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Tashina,
thank you.
do you have time for one more question?
Yes.
Excuse me. I'm just curious if you know how many tribes are represented in the student body, or maybe not in the student body, but in the American Indian Council?
We have 1, 2, 3. We have quite a few different tribes. Currently, I'm going to say the most diversity we have in the group itself is 5. We have members of the Goshute. We have members from the Uinta Ute tribes. We also have other tribal members from the Shoshone Northwestern Band and also the band from Idaho. So a lot of them are local. We primarily have more Navajos here, but we try to be very inclusive to the other tribes because we do have different cultural backgrounds and ways that we do things. So we try to be very embracive to all of those identities. So. Yeah. Okay. Just to give you more facts, Weber State has roughly about 183 Native American self-identifying students, and that's up since 5 years ago, which was about 118. So we're doing pretty good. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Mr. Chair, are they part of the Diversity Commission or group?
It's a good question. Sure.
We don't
Maybe.
see you here often, so we
Do you,
we're
do
anxious
you
to.
do Native Americans have a seat in our diversity commission?
I have attended one meeting, and I think that was early during the summer. I am not sure if there's a representative there, but I have attended that meeting, and I know that Miss Betty Sawyer attends a lot of those meetings, and I stay closely connected with her in regards to some of the things that happen here in the community.
Okay. Ralph attends a few of those as well, and he's in the back, knowing he's not allowed to talk from the back, but he's going like this. So
Okay.
sounds like it's something we might need to revisit.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right. Good night.
Okay. Before we get to the items of common consent, I just want to make a declaration. Tonight, we're just considering setting the public hearing for a couple budget items, one of which involves funds that are related to my employer. And so having to do with the Weber River restoration. So in my day job, I sign a conflict of interest declaring that I will not be voting on items related to funding from my day job. So I'll conduct the proceeding to entertain common consent, but let the record reflect I will not be voting. Thank you.
Chair Nadolski, then I would make a motion that we adopt the common consent agenda by setting the public hearing for both items for November 12th.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Heyer, second by Councilmember Lopez to adopt the items of common consent. This is a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. And again, let the record reflect I did not vote. But when we consider that in the public hearing, I will excuse myself from the vote and from the chambers as per our rules during consideration. Thank you, guys. Okay, next item on our agenda is approval of minutes for the work session of April 2nd, 2019, and the regular meeting of April 16th, 2019. Councilmember Heyer.
Chair Nadolski, I have reviewed those and found them to be accurate to the best of my recollection.
Thank you. For the regular meeting of May 7th, 2019, Councilmember Lopez.
Yes, Chair, I reviewed the minutes and found them to be accurate to the best of my recollection.
Thank you. For the joint work session of May 7th, 2019, and the joint work session of May 14th, 2019, Councilmember Blair.
Yes, thank you, Chair Nadolski. I have reviewed both of those minutes and found them to be accurate. And with that, I would make a motion that we adopt the minutes listed.
I second it.
We have a motion by Councilmember Blair, seconded by Councilmember Stevens to adopt the minutes as presented. This is a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Thanks for spending time reviewing those, guys. Next item on our agenda is reports from the Planning Commission. First item is consideration of a rezone for 1752 and 1754 Pacific Avenue. This came to us via a petition and is presented to us tonight by our very own Greg McGovern.
Yes. And just waiting for this to pull up. He's doing many tasks over there.
Makes you miss your days of the overhead, huh?
Yeah. Actually, we're cleaning out some files and found some transparencies the other day of overhead. So
We'll
That
put
wasn't
those in
all
the
that long
archives.
I also found some carbon paper too.
That was longer ago.
Okay. Thank you. So as you mentioned, this is a petition that was filed with the city by Joshua Christensen to rezone property at 1752 Pacific Avenue, and it was presently manufacturing, and his request is to rezone to R15. This gives you an idea of the location of the property. You can see on two sides, on the north and on the east side, as R15 zoning presently. So this is kind of at an edge of a transition between residential zoning and manufacturing zoning, which is to the west of Pacific Avenue. The property that is to the north was rezoned earlier this year to R15 to start the progression of that zoning along the street. The difference between the zone designations, R15 means single family on a 5,000 minimum square foot lot. The M1 is a manufacturing, light industrial type use. And so the request is to make a change really from character of the area that's on the zoning map. However, the area really was kind of a mixture all the time. There's a lot of residential area down there that prior to the Gibson Community Plan was all zone manufacturing, and then with the Gibson Community Plan, a lot of it was rezoned to residential where there's a majority of housing. Some of the other areas that were on edges were left to be looked at as individuals may desire to do certain things with it. The property in question had a home on it that was demolished, and the request is to rezone this property in order to build new single-family homes on the property, or the properties, as two properties have now been acquired. As I mentioned, the R15 is single-family, 5,000 square foot minimum lot size, 50-foot lot frontage. With this rezoning request and the request that was done earlier this year, that could give a potential of 5 lots to be built on this location on Pacific. As the Planning Commission looked at this, they looked, of course, at the Gibson Community Plan and at the general plan. And as I mentioned, the boundaries of the R15 zoning starting to circle around the property, the fact that this would follow the boundary lines of parcels and not divide the parcels up, those were consistent elements that the Commission felt were important in zoning. More importantly was the Gibson Community Plan. And that Gibson Community Plan, which was adopted a few years ago, talked about reestablishment of that residential area. And as the Planning Commission reviewed this, they felt that this is very consistent with that plan. And so they didn't have any problems with the idea of rezoning it. Now, one of the questions that's come up before was then why not continue all the way down Pacific Avenue? When the Commission looked at this with the Gibson Community Plan, they felt it would be more important to let each property owner decide, do they want to stay as a manufacturing use? And if they're a home, that means they have a nonconformity. Or do they want to let the individuals decide, do they want to move that direction in the future? So they really looked at the Pacific Avenue as being that transition area and let individual property owners make those petitions for what they want to have individually on those lots. As you can see, with this movement starting to move to the south, it may be that more properties will be looking at rezoning in the future, but the Commission would still want to let that be an individual process. So they're recommending to you rezoning this property. It was a 6-0 vote to rezone to the R15 zoning designation. Any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Montgomery? Gotta like the sound of that, right? Pretty straightforward. Okay, if there's no other questions or comments on this item, I'll entertain a motion.
Accept public input.
Sorry, thank you so much. We don't have public
Mr.
input
Chair,
on this.
and the petitioner as well, if you want to invite him.
Yeah,
to
we
it.
have probably try with the petitioner.
Thanks. I tried. Sorry, Greg. Okay, we're joined by the petitioner, John Christensen. John, if you want to take a few minutes and address the council. Sorry, I almost forgot you there.
That's okay. No, Greg said everything I was going to say anyway.
I get ahead of
So
myself.
he pretty much summed it up. I'm the owner of both parcels right now. The parcel to the north, we were here a couple months ago and we got it rezoned. I should have rezoned the parcel to the south. It has a home on it currently. But at the time, I was considering doing a remodel on it. And a remodel you can do with the non-conforming, but it needs so much work. Tearing it down is going to be a lot better idea. And to rebuild it, it has to be in the R15 because you can't rebuild it. So I'm kind of stuck between the two. So it'd be nice if it was an R15, then we could make it nice and start from scratch. So that was the reason there.
Okay, any questions for the petitioner?
Thank you.
Okay.
You bet.
Thanks, Josh. I think I might have called you John earlier too. Sorry. So when you're the chair, you have two different scripts. So I was looking at one and not the other. My apologies. I'm back with the game now. Okay. We will be accepting public input. So if anybody wishes to address the council on this specific item, now is your opportunity. Do you need a motion?
You don't have to.
Okay. Seeing no motion, we will entertain action on this item.
Chair Nadolski, I propose that we adopt ordinance 2019-44.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Councilmember White, seconded by Councilmember Blair to adopt proposed ordinance 2019-44. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Blair.
Aye.
Councilmember Heyer.
Aye.
Councilmember Lopez.
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens.
Aye.
Councilmember White.
Aye.
Chair Nadolski.
Aye, that passes. Thank you, Greg, and thank you, Josh, not John. Okay, next item is cannabis amendments. That is back to you, Mr. Montgomery.
Back to me.
Yep.
So this is a recommendation from the Planning Commission regarding ordinances for the regulation of medical marijuana. As you are aware, the state has enacted standards for medical marijuana, medical cannabis. And that took place in a couple of things. First, as a general election last year, Proposition 2. And then the state had a special legislative session. And just recently, in September of this year, they also went back and did some modifications to that act. That act requires that communities, well, first let me get a statement here because I know there's some questions that came up from some council members early on about how does the state law and the federal law not work together? And in terms of the regulations, the Department of Justice in 2009 made a comment with the intent of not to prosecute any actions that are in compliance with local state laws in regards to medical marijuana. So with that kind of general comment, when the state adopted their regulations this year, they made it clear that a municipality cannot deny or revoke a land use permit to operate a cannabis production facility on the sole basis that it violates federal law. And so you have those two regulations that have been, or two statements that are in place now saying that this is really a state matter in terms of medical cannabis. And as long as it stays within the state, it will be a state issue. So when the state adopted the regulations, they then talked about two things being created. One, establishment of what they call a cannabis production establishment, which has three parts to it: a growing facility, a processing facility, and a testing facility, and then also then a pharmacy. Those two items, the state law says that the cities, the counties, need to allow to have happen in their communities. They did allow the cities or counties the flexibility to define certain locations for the manufacturing processes that could then be in a manufacturing zone that the city or county could identify. Otherwise, it would be allowed in all manufacturing zones in that community. They also said that the pharmacies would be allowed in a commercial or manufacturing facility. But state law then also added some exclusions or boundaries of what they call community locations and also residential buffers. So as we look at our ordinance tonight, we're taking into consideration those state laws and taking the advantages that they have and looking at what's best for Ogden in terms of the fit. In that law, they said if you don't have a designation of a certain manufacturing areas, in all manufacturing areas, it'll be allowed. And as you can see, the state law sets some parameters that we don't control, and that's the number of facilities. In the terms of the cultivation facilities, that's the growing areas. The state issues those permits. There's a maximum of 15 under the present law that would be allowed throughout the state. They're also, they set in the recent amendment to the bill, set a sign limitation of a 4x5 sign is the only type of advertising that can take place on the property. They also added in the provisions just recently to that buffer area, the 600 feet from primary residential areas and 1,000 feet from community locations. They also added a recent amendment that they have a 20% leeway from these distances that the state can grant as a reduction if they feel it's so appropriate. And so we need to be aware of that as we have these maps, the state still has the leeway if they feel that too many areas are restricted, that they can take a 20% reduction in those distances to provide opportunities for other areas. Two words are used in that buffering, and that's primary residential. So in our ordinance, we help define what primary residential is, and that's all of our R zones, R1, R2, anything that has that R in front of it is intended mainly to be a residential zone. But also the MU zone we identify as a primary residential zone, and that is because by definition 60% it has to be residential in that mixed use, and that sets it primarily as residential. So we make clear that in these zones and the MU zone, that buffering goes from those distances, from those zones out. And those are not areas that we consider for either manufacturing or pharmacies. The community locations, state law defined as public and private schools, churches, libraries, playgrounds, parks. And then just recently in an amendment, they added child care facilities and preschool as also boundary exclusions. So as we looked at those standards, these are the areas that in the manufacturing zone that will be available for cannabis production, which means either growing, testing, or processing. As you can see, that limits it to the west side of Ogden to what our industrial areas are, and not all of the industrial areas. As the Planning Commission considered that, saying, do we allow it in all the manufacturing zones with those boundaries, or do we create a specific designation? They looked at some considerations of both what the growers are looking for, their time frames that they have to have product ready for the state in March. Also, most are looking for existing buildings to help keep costs down. Outdoor growing has limited times, and we don't have an agricultural zone, so really indoor growing is what we'd have in Ogden City if a facility was to be created. But then we looked at the purposes of our manufacturing zones and those various purposes and secondary impacts that can come from the growing and processing that we did research with other communities who have had experiences. And as we discussed this with the Planning Commission, we felt that it'd be more appropriate or most appropriate to limit the production establishments to the Ogden Commercial Industrial Park. This is that area between 1900 West and Midland Drive, that dark purple area. And it still meets the state criteria of one of our manufacturing zones being established, but not opening up to all our manufacturing zones, which do have smatterings of all different types of activities there. So the proposed ordinance will identify the OCIP zone as an area for the production establishments to be located in. In terms of the pharmacies, the state also controls the licensing of those pharmacies, and 14 licenses are established that can be issued throughout the entire state, and the state determines those licenses. They made an amendment in the September regulation, and that was reducing the community location distances to 200 feet rather than 600 feet. And so with that revision, we had to amend our maps. Again, also in the pharmacies, they have that 20% leeway language in it on those distance restrictions that the state can make a determination on. They also set standards, which we put into our ordinances to be clear, of the one public entrance into the building, limiting the signage to the size, but also that it can only be limited to the content of the business name, the hours of operation, and a green cross. We want to make sure our sign ordinance and the state's regulations said the same thing. So those proposals are also being made when you consider this ordinance tonight. What that does in terms of possible locations for the medical, for the pharmacy locations, is in this map illustrated above. This, again, shows you manufacturing areas, some commercial areas. A lot of the commercial areas in the city are within 600 feet of residential uses. So that really takes out a lot of commercial areas. As you can see, it mainly concentrates some of the commercial areas to downtown, as that blow up on the right shows. The Newgate Mall area is another possible commercial area. And 12th Street on Wall Avenue has some areas that are commercially zoned. The rest, again, are manufacturing areas because of those residential and community location buffers that exist. So this map would, if you adopt the ordinance, this map indicates where those pharmacies could be located if one is desired within Ogden.
So, Greg, on the pharmacy, does the state run the operations of that, or
No.
controls that, or how is that?
No,
work?
they issue a license for private companies to be those pharmacies. Okay. So they will issue the licenses, and then it's up to the pharmacies to make the connections for the product and to run the establishment.
And there are some standards by which they need to operate.
Right. There are a whole list in 4 different sections of the state code that address how those operate and the controls in that.
So the Department of Agriculture would regulate the production, the producers, and then the Department of Health would regulate the pharmacies, correct?
Correct.
So they do have a regulatory role, just not an operational role.
Okay.
Correct.
In our ordinance, is there anything on the production that mitigates the odors that are emitted?
So in the ordinance, we do talk about that. In fact, as you look here, we talk about standards for filtering of exhaust air from those type of facilities. We also look at things of what do you do to the building? Trying to make sure you don't draw attention to it and just let it be part of the other buildings. So we don't talk about not painting the building in terms of painting brick or something. In some states, you'll see a lot of things done to the buildings to really draw attention to them, just really painting them white, a lot of different design work to just draw attention to that. Here, we're saying it's really nondescript. If the sign is nondescript, why not the building be nondescript also? We do talk about, like I said, those things to help in terms of air quality. We talk about in the setting up the definitions in our ordinance so that it's clear what all the definitions mean, so they, again, concur with state law. And so really a lot of the things you're seeing tonight are things that we're doing to try to mimic the state law, but make it clear that here's how Ogden's ordinance works and is in compliance with state law. So the Planning Commission recommended 7-0 to approve the proposed ordinances before you tonight.
Any questions from Mr. Montgomery?
Is there a timeline to have this ordinance passed by?
Really, if we don't have it adopted, then anyone can do any of those. They can do any manufacturing zone and any commercial zone, and just follow state laws. The state has given us a little time to put this in, and that's really, we're at the end of that time. We're getting a lot of phone calls from people wanting to be able to locate facilities. And so it is important that we have that ordinance in place. If you're comfortable with it being the OCIP, if you feel concerned, then any of the manufacturing zones then become open for the productions.
So there's a little area, it looks like within our downtown, that it would also fit as far as a pharmacy?
Correct.
As we build the downtown, would that change, or would that be grandfathered in if they have that? And
It would not change. It would stay the same, because the way the provision reads is any commercial zone that is not limited by what we call the primary residential. So even though we may have housing as part of a downtown, it is not a primary residential zone. And so it has to be allowed. The other thing the state law says is you cannot set distances between pharmacies. You know, for example, we've done that with smoke shops and title companies and those. The law is specific that you cannot set distances between other facilities.
Greg, are we getting more inquiries from the production side or the pharmacy side?
It's going now to the pharmacy side. Early on, it was production side, and now it's more pharmacy side. And again, they're all based on that license being obtained from the state.
Yeah. And there can only be up to 14.
Correct.
And
Throughout
that's
the entire state.
That's statewide.
Statewide.
Are they looking to maybe concentrate north where the...
Well, I'm sure they're going to look at
urbanized cities?
population numbers, and you know, there may be 2 in the Weber County, maybe, you know, this is speculation, but
sure. Yeah.
You just look at those numbers and you think, well, Salt Lake area, maybe 3, 1 down south, some down south.
Okay.
One of the things they changed in the state law, too, is the ability of the pharmacies to deliver the product. That you don't have to walk into the pharmacy. It can be delivered. That was a recent change that they did in September.
Can or can't?
Can or
be?
Can
be.
Yeah.
Okay.
Before you had to come into the pharmacy.
Okay. I accept your speculation and appreciate it. Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Montgomery?
So do we, as a city, have to report to the state of these areas that we've designated for that?
No, we just have to put it in our ordinance so that we have set something that is more defined than what the state ordinance is. If we don't have anything, then the state ordinance is what you have to follow.
Okay.
Okay. I think that's it. Okay. We will also accept public input on this item. If anybody cares to address the council on cannabis amendments, now is your opportunity. Ralph, please limit your comments to 3 minutes. And your remote. Thanks, Brandon. Oh, that's the dog leash. Thanks, Brandon. Please state your name and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Wood?
Ralph Price, 636 6th Street. I'd just like to say that looking at the map and looking at everything there, I'd like Ogden City to remember that racial diversity here. And I look at that map and everything, I can understand with the growth pattern and everything, looking to do it in the areas that you are. And that good commercial use of that land that maybe a little deficit. But as I look at there, if you're talking about for the pharmacies, even if it's only 2 placed here, the place that we're talking about is 20th between Washington Wall and this way, and that's a minority section. That's a minority section town where there's not many whites or anything like this in there, but maybe it'll be a good thing. But I'd also like to see that there be the option that maybe in one of the other areas around town that are on the white side of town, or on the white side of town, extended out this way or extended out this way. It'd be discussed and a possibility being there so that it's not such a obvious choice that we're putting these things in a certain type of area, and we're excluding them from a certain type of area. I'd just like to see that thought was given to it, the perception of it, because Ogden has always been the state of Utah's sense of growth for all minorities being here as well as whites, and we have all just had a great time living together. I don't want to see that we start doing legislation, we start doing growth patterns and strategic planning and everything, and we sectionally do things. We do things up on the east side and up here on the south side and everything that are great mountain trails and all these type of things. We still have Marshall White's not done. And that's, there's an anger and there's a frustration inside the minority community that it seems like everything is being done outside and around, but when it comes time for something like this, cannabis is a new thing on this medical side. Okay, it may be, but it has a stigma that has been there for years, and as I just don't want to see if something placed only consideration be in that boxed area that where we have the biggest growth of minority businesses, minority housing, and stuff like that, and that's the only area we can put these things of question into. I'd like the door open so that you consider South Ogden. I just get her up above Harrison and listen up that consider them with these things too. When you have to talk about anything that's got a little bit of diversity to it and everything, a little bit of a question to it, I want it so the whole of Ogden has a chance to be able to do it. Isn't there a hole somewhere in you guys' armor that you might want to consider besides just our area? Okay, that's all I want to say.
Thank you, Ralph. Anybody else care to address the council? Okay, seeing no movement. Any comments to the item from council members or?
Greg could probably talk about some of the limitations that the state has already placed on us about the location. You maybe want to do that.
I was probably going to go back to the map, but I won't worry about that. So what the state established was a 600-foot distance from any residential zone or residential primary use area. And so as we created this map, it was all created based on what the state said. They will not issue any licenses to anything that is within these distances, 600 feet of a residential area or 200 feet from the community locations. So we took all of those requirements and said, this is what is left in Ogden because of what the state had established. So we can't expand beyond that because the state says we won't issue a license if they are closer than these distances. So this map reflects what those distances are that the state created. Of course, the state made a blanket statement, not knowing how each city develops and how each city looks and shape and those type of things. So this really is just following what the state will only issue licenses for, whether or not we identify it on a map. That would say, if you're within these distances, we won't issue a license. So this is to identify for us where are those locations in Ogden City.
Okay. Thanks for the clarification, Greg.
So we could only have maybe one pharmacy then?
It'll be up to the state to determine how those licenses are issued, but I would assume we'd have one at least.
Yeah. Okay.
How many statewide?
14.
14.
I bet we have more than one.
Probably
Just a guess.
Maybe two.
Is that like Weber State by 15, or is that? Okay.
Yeah, that's my prognostication.
Yeah. Thanks, Craig. Okay,
Chair, I think I want to make it clear because I think Ralph made a comment, and I just want to make sure everybody understands this is being dictated by the state, and there are zones or the residential zones, open space. And so when we start to draw lines around the city, there's not a whole lot of places that we can put these. So it's not us that's trying to create that. It's the state that's required that. So I want people to understand this is not ours to really draw those lines.
Yep. I do know where you live, though, and I do see where your senator is sitting next to you, your state senator.
I think that's important, what Marcia has indicated.
Correct.
That, we do have regulations that we need to follow
right
in that aspect there.
Yep. Thanks, you guys. Okay, any other comments or questions or action on the item? Awkward silence. also an option.
If there's no more discussion, I will go ahead and make a motion that we adopt proposed ordinance 2019-46.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Councilmember Blair, seconded by Councilmember White to adopt proposed ordinance 2019-46. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Heyer,
Aye.
Councilmember Lopez,
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens,
Aye.
Councilmember White,
Aye.
Councilmember Blair,
Aye.
Chair Nadolski.
Aye, that passes.
Chair,
Yep.
if I might just get on my soapbox for just a second about this. This
marijuana?
is such a, yeah, a little
Okay,
bit.
yeah.
It's unfortunate that we are left with this. It's uncomfortable for me to do an ordinance that is in violation of federal law. And I don't really blame us. I blame the feds. I really think that they're the ones that have the control to fix this whole problem. And I just wish they would. That's all I got to say.
Yeah. Kind of ran downhill to us, didn't it?
Kind of did, yeah.
Kind of did.
It puts us in a real bad spot. And, that's not to say that some administration somewhere down in the future may not change their mind. They're going to start to enforce federal law, and that puts everybody in a bad spot. Mm-hmm. Where I think there is some legitimate medical uses for cannabis, and they ought to change the classification of that drug at a nationwide level so that it can be exploited and used in an appropriate manner and not just skirting the issue.
And studied.
Yeah.
Well. Okay. Thank you, Councilmember Heyer. Okay, next item on our agenda is reports from administration. We'll be starting with Justice Court recertification. That is, we're joined by Debbie Colvin, Justice Court Administrator. There you are.
Good evening.
Good evening.
This is Judge Clay Stuckey, and he has been kind enough with our certification to be able to represent to the council tonight.
So we understand at the Justice Court that even though we are a third branch of government, we aren't a mandatory branch, and it is optional whether Ogden has a Justice Court or not. So I thought it might be useful to talk about what we are trying to accomplish at the Justice Court as we administer justice for the misdemeanor and small claims cases that come before the court. We think at the Justice Court that we do help the city quite a bit by addressing the misdemeanor crimes within the city and the small claims cases. We think there definitely is a help to the community safety, the city's image, and we believe that actually rolls into economic development, basically. And probably the best case I could make for that is if you look at what happened in the Rio Grande area in Salt Lake City, where due to some overlapping tensions between different jurisdictions, the county sheriff, Salt Lake City, where the smaller infractions and misdemeanor crimes were not enforced for a number of years. What you had was a great increase in vagrancy being concentrated in an area, disruptive crimes, the smaller assaults, the disorderly conduct, and things like that got to the point where businesses couldn't operate in that area. All the businesses wanted to leave the area. Probably all of you ate at that wonderful Rio Grande Mexican restaurant there that when I worked in Salt Lake City, I loved to go there, until the neighborhood started to have such an appearance of degradation due to all the small crimes being concentrated around that area that people wouldn't go to that restaurant anymore. And you had a business owner with a great investment in that business being ruined by a lack of enforcement. So we think by addressing those smaller crimes, it makes an incredible difference to the image, to the feel of a community, whether people like to come to Ogden, whether people like to go downtown to Ogden. You want a friendly, orderly community that people feel welcome in. And if you allow the smaller crimes to increase in an area, that definitely changes the image of the city. And so with the district courts being very busy, we feel that's the purpose of the justice court. And that's the way the state views it as well. The justice courts are able to spend the necessary time looking at those smaller cases to try to see that justice is done, and to make sure that the smaller crimes don't turn into bigger crimes, and the smaller crimes are addressed in a positive way that hopefully turns the tide and avoids recidivism and helps the community be a better place to live. I think we all have a lot of pride living in Ogden. It's a wonderful community with great diversity. I'm very proud to be a resident of Ogden. I definitely love this city, and we feel the Justice Court does a lot to make sure it stays a wonderful city, and if possible, even improves with that. A few positives that I'd like to address about the Justice Court. First of all, you have a wonderful staff. I can't take any credit for that. I probably have to give Ms. Colvin most of the credit for that. But we have a wonderful, diverse staff, men and women. It reflects the community quite a bit. We have out of the 12 full-time clerks, we have 5 of them that are Hispanic, 4 of them that are very fluent in the Spanish language, so that any Spanish speakers will always feel comfortable. We have 2 full-time interpreters that we use, that the district court also uses, that help any Spanish speakers address their cases, and they are wonderful interpreters. And then again, we have 4 clerks that are fluent that can help people as well. And our staff is well trained, and I think regarded around the state as perhaps one of the best staffing groups for a court in the state. So you can be very proud of that. Whenever the AOC does training statewide, they usually go to our staff first to figure out how we can train other clerks in other jurisdictions. So you have a staff at the Justice Court you can be very proud of. Things that I think we've improved on in the short tenure since Judge Junk and I were appointed as Justice Court judges, and I'm still very grateful to all of you for allowing us to serve in that capacity. I felt like I was very candid and upfront and honest with you about what I hope to achieve as a judge and how I would administer my court, and you went ahead and appointed me anyway, and so I feel like I've had a bit of a mandate, and I've tried to administer the court with a lot of compassion, with a lot of understanding. We do try to balance out justice and enforcement with the law, but with also helping people. I think you can view the Justice Court a little bit as a social services organization. We are not only enforcing the law, but we try to enforce the law by looking at individuals in a way that can help them avoid making the same mistakes. One of the wonderful things about Justice Court is none of the crimes in front of us are that big and ugly that you ever feel like someone's beyond redemption and help. And sometimes you get that feel at the district court. At the Justice Court, it's not that way. We are always trying to help people improve their lives, trying to help people find a better way so that they don't appear in front of our court again, and they can work out their problems. And I think we accomplish that. We do have some frequent flyers that we see again and again, but I think we have a lot of success stories in that the Justice Court works with people to try to help them realize their mistakes and avoid making the same mistakes again. And we do see a lot of people change and do well. We were picked to help spearhead a new drunk driving program called the 24/7 program. And Judge Junk and I have been very active with that, trying to help people stop their substance abuse issues. The Weber County Sheriff has worked closely with us in administering that program to make sure that somebody that makes a mistake with drunk driving doesn't make that mistake again. And we're seeing a lot of success in that program. I think if you were to watch our court, and I would invite all of you, if you ever have any concerns, or if you're just curious how your court operates, I would invite you to come in and sit in on a session of court. I think we have achieved a very high level of procedural fairness in our court. And I think that there's probably always been substantive fairness at the Justice Court, but I think we have achieved a level of procedural fairness where I believe, honestly, most of the people, when I say most, maybe as high as 90%, feel like they have been heard and they were treated fairly. They might not always like the sentence or paying a fine or even jail time, but I think they will at least feel that the judge listened to me, that the process was fair, and that's an important part in their rehabilitation and not making the same mistake again. Study after study has shown that that it's not the punishment that's the biggest deterrent to committing the crime again, although that's part of it. The bigger factor in whether someone will buy into the system and try to be a law-abiding citizen, the biggest factor is whether they feel the system is fair. If they feel that they aren't heard and the system is rigged against them, they're likely to view themselves as outsiders and say, there's nothing I can do about this. But if they feel like they have some input in that system and they've been heard, they are more likely to engage law enforcement in a more positive manner, and they are going to feel that they have some control over their own lives and they can do things to change, and that will be recognized. And I think in the past several years, we have made great improvements in the Justice Court. That's been a point of emphasis for both Judge Junk and myself, is to make sure there is a great deal of procedural fairness, that we try to make sure everyone feels like they've been heard and treated fairly. And as much as you can have a criminal prosecution be a positive experience, we honestly try to make it as a positive experience as possible, that we're there working on a problem to solve it so you don't make the same mistake again when we're dealing with people. The public defenders that we have at the Justice Court, that's been a great improvement. Just it hasn't been quite 3 years I've been a judge in your court, but we have made great improvements over the quality of representation for the indigent with the public defenders. We have 2 very committed public defenders now that track the cases from start to finish and do an excellent job. And the city attorney's office should get a lot of credit for helping improve that at the city level. You can not all justice courts are as well served by their public defenders as the Ogden City Justice Court is, and you probably have 2 of the better, if not the best, public defenders in a justice court in the state. So that is very well. Again, our court administrator, Debbie Colvin here, helped spearhead an initiative that we wanted to do, which is the Lantern House Court. And that is where, realizing that a lot of our trespasses and some of the other crimes stem from underlying problems, one of them being homelessness, we hold a session of court every month at the Lantern House to try to get at the root cause of some of their issues. What we're trying to do is give the people that are homeless extra incentive to work with the counselors at the Lantern House to help them find housing, to help them address their other problems, whether it might be substance abuse or a lack of ID or a lack of employment, other things that will help them get away from being homeless, that eventually leads to trespass charges and drug charges and things like that. By addressing that root problem and having that tied in with the court, we have seen people engage in the programs at the Lantern House in a more productive way and graduate out of the Lantern House program and find housing where we won't see them again on trespass charges or drug charges. And I guess one last thing I'd address is that I think the city can be proud that we have a very efficient court. The administrative office of the courts, the AOC, does a ranking of weighted caseloads for the court, and both Judge Junk and I have a 1.6 weighted rating for judges. And what that means is each judge does the job of 1.6 judges. And we think we've been able to be very efficient, so we have a heavy caseload without needing to hire another judge. I mean, technically the AOC would say, well, you need 3.2 judges for your court based on your caseload. But and this is again mainly attributed to the wonderful staff we have. We have Ms. Colvin here, and then we have our two lead clerks. Pam and Jerry are both here, who are extremely knowledgeable. In fact, they could probably easily replace Judge Junk and I. Probably shouldn't tell you that, but they could probably easily replace us. They're so smart and understand everything in the court, and they help us operate at such an efficient level without sacrificing procedural fairness and caring for the individual, that we can get through that caseload in a way that's very productive for everyone involved. So I would love to, and please feel to ask questions of Debbie or me now if you wish, but we would love to schedule some time with you in a work meeting to address any concerns you might have about the court. One of the things we have to do for the recertification is one of the boxes that the AOC wants to check is that we have had communication with the city council, that the judges have had that communication. So this is our attempt to check that box today. But we want you to be proud of the court that you have in the city. We're awfully proud of it. Our staff is very, very customer service oriented and tries to help people and go the extra mile to help people. We're proud of what we do. We definitely like the city to share in that pride and feel like you have a court that represents the city government and the citizens of Ogden very well. And so if you want us to come to a work meeting at some time, and we would gladly answer any questions that you have. So I've probably taken more time than I should have already, but is there anything you think we should add, Debbie? Oh, and then I guess I did this. This is a little unorthodox, and honestly, I didn't plan this. I didn't realize Mr. Price was going to be at this meeting, but I recognize that Mr. Price was in my court. Was it earlier this week?
Yesterday.
Okay. So Mr. Price was in my court. If you want, just to give you a feel for I think how maybe citizens regard their treatment in our court and how our court operates. Mr. Price was in my court just recently advocating on behalf of a young man who didn't have very serious charges. I think it was like driving on a suspension or something like that. But I thought as an impromptu thing, if you wanted to ask Mr. Price what his impression of our of our court was you would hear it from from a leading citizen what what his thoughts were. And I don't know, this could blow up in my face. Maybe if it's negative, I'll be surprised. But you could certainly ask Mr. Price how he viewed the interaction of our staff and judges with the public as we tried to administer justice in the justice court.
Judge Stuckey, I'll just.
Can I just say one thing?
We can't have Ralph come up. He always wants to. I know. Sorry, man. But I'll speak for him. I hope. I'm gonna try. Right? I've only ever heard one bit of feedback about you since we appointed you, and it was from Ralph.
Okay.
But I'll just say I remember when we did put the screws to you on our confirmation process, didn't we? That was quite a night. But what we were doing, I think, is we were trying to get at your heart. Right? We wanted to understand your character and your integrity and the kind of heart that you have for serving others. And when Ralph called me to tell me what had happened, he didn't call me because he knew you were on our agenda tonight. He called me because he was elated that you would listen to the story of that young man to see what his circumstances were, and you were there to try to help. Right? And he could have left there with a pretty substantial fine, especially for a kid of his age. And that wouldn't have helped him get on the right foot, right? But you recognized that he had been serving the community alongside Ralph, right? He had put in a lot of dedicated hours, and I've seen that kid do those hours. And you recognized it, and I think that kind of a decision and that kind of discretion is the kind of thing that we had hoped for when we got to know your heart and your character that night when we appointed you. So I was thrilled to hear from Ralph about that, and I hope that is not an isolated instance. I hope it's a common instance because that's what we need. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Any questions or comments for Judge Stuckey?
I have a couple comments.
Mm-hmm.
So Mr. Stuckey, Judge Stuckey, I did have an opportunity to sit in your court one time, and I can also attest to what you're saying, your approach and to treating people and your compassion and all the stuff that you talked about. I don't know if you remember seeing me there or not, but I wonder.
I do, and I appreciate that.
Sure.
I really do.
Oh, absolutely. I won't tell anybody why I was there for. But I didn't do anything wrong.
I didn't think that little red car of yours went that fast. But
yeah, I will say Councilman Lopez was not a defendant.
Right. And I also really do welcome an opportunity to be in a work session meeting and talk to you and some of your staff a little more. I'm always looking for opportunities. If there's anything I can do to help, but based on my background, my personal experience, my background living in Ogden as a Hispanic individual, and given the fact that the population in our city is largely Hispanic, and I just want to help, even if it's in a small way, and learning more and being able to ask more questions, I think that could be very helpful. So thank you for that offer, and I would really welcome that.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
We will be taking you up on that. I think when we talked about this in the work session, and this is something that I think Mr. Lopez is getting at too. We do hear feedback from people about our court system. There's a lot of people that interact with the system at that level, and we want to know how that process works. We want to know how it is and isn't impacting people. But quite frankly, it's not something that we know a lot about. You know, of all the departments, we're constantly talking about planning issues and economic development and police and fire, right? Budget things. But that topic doesn't come up much. And we recognize in our work session that we need to fill that gap. Our understanding. And so we do welcome you to come back. We would love for you to walk us through, if someone were to come into contact with the court system, what would their first exposure be? What would their first example be? And what would the next step be, et cetera? Help us understand the services that are provided so that we can help understand the input that we're getting from people. Okay. And it would also help if you were to retire and we go through the confirmation process again, the mayor makes a recommendation. We go through advice and consent in this process. But really what we were wanting to know is, who are you as a person? What are your values, right? But it would really help us if we had that background to go with that time too. Okay. Anybody else
I just have a real quick comment, and as obviously an overloaded 3.2 judges on 2 staff there. I appreciate you thinking outside the box and actually working with the Lantern House and an underserved community that really needs help. And part of helping them is to get out of that cycle. And so I appreciate you just reaching out. I know that that's not an efficient use of your day, but I really do appreciate it. And I'm sure that they do as well. So thank you for taking the time to do that. And Debbie, do it for
the Lantern House
spearheading
has just been wonderful on that, and really Debbie gets most of the credit because she got all of that rolling. But it's such a great tool because we'll see people in jail often on the video cameras. They're still in jail and they do their arraignment on the video camera, and we can ask them, well, why were you trespassing? And it's like 9 times out of 10. If you really dig, they may not tell you straight up, but if you really dig, you'll find out because they're really homeless. They were, so they're breaking into some old building or something, or they're camping in someplace they ought not to be. But by the Lantern House working so closely with us on that court, what we can say is, okay, well, look, let's get you out of jail, but let's address the problem. Let's have you go straight to the Lantern House. When you get out of jail, go straight to the Lantern House. One of the counselors will help you. You can bypass the overflow area. That's really not a very nice place to stay. And if you'll engage in the program and give it your 100% effort, these counselors can probably find you housing. And really, if someone engages with them and tries, they always do find them housing. Their success rate on somebody that's really engaged is very high. And so we can use the system to channel someone into a program that'll really make a big difference in their life. It changes, being on the street and being exposed to all these bad things into being in stable housing where it makes a huge impact, positive impact in their life. So we're very appreciative of the Lantern House and the support that Ogden City gives to the Lantern House.
Thank you for thinking outside the box, and kudos again.
No kidding. One thing we've learned about the system and services is that the more gaps and the travel distance and the need for transportation and et cetera between services, people fall through the cracks. Right.
Absolutely.
So I have to think that you taking your court system to the Lantern House to help resolve it helps keep people from falling through the cracks. So thank you for doing that. I'll add to your comment there. Anybody else have questions or comments for Mr. Key? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. If there's no other questions or comments, we can entertain action on this item.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt proposed resolution 2019-22.
Second. We have a motion by Councilmember Stevens, seconded by Councilmember Heyer to adopt proposed resolution 2019-22. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Lopez.
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens.
Aye.
Councilmember White.
Aye.
Councilmember Blair.
Aye.
Councilmember Heyer.
Aye.
Chair Nadolski.
Aye. That passes. Thanks, you guys. We look forward to having you back for that work session. We really do want to learn more, and I hope that leads to an opportunity to come actually watch the process too. And anything you can do, I'll give you my stamp of approval for what Ralph does for people in the community. He is absolutely tireless to service for others. So thank you for helping him help others. Okay, next item on our agenda is housing development agreements. The first one, item BI, is with the Weber Housing Authority. And I think we have, I saw Ward. Oh, there he is. Ward Ogden will be presenting that item to us.
I hope they knew they didn't have to leave.
Yeah. I don't think they know. I think they want to.
Chair, members of the council, we have 2 items that involve memorandum of agreements with 2 partners in the development of housing in our neighborhoods, which will help us to carry out our quality neighborhood strategy. The first one is Weber Housing Authority. It's proposed that we enter into a loan, actually adopt the resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into the memorandum of agreement One of those provisions in that agreement is to enter into a loan agreement with Weber Housing Authority to help them develop 3 homes on lots that they purchased from Weber County this summer. And those lots are located at 2881 Lincoln, 3238 Pingree, and 286 Franklin Street. The intent is to develop new housing that's affordable to low and moderate income households, initially as rentals and then for sale. So it would be a lease purchase agreement. If the Housing Authority Board chooses to sell, then that could be accommodated as well, sell outright. Again, the loan is proposed to be $25,000 per lot, and it's to be used for pre-development costs such as design permits and the utility work. These loans would come from our Community Development Block Grant, and those are eligible work items that can be done with block grant. Also, the city staff is going to be helping the Housing Authority with design work and bidding and construction management. Also, the process of entering into agreements and marketing and selling. So we'll provide some assistance in that regard. This is a one-time agreement, obviously, for 3 homes. And so this would just be a one loan agreement. The schedule for these projects is that we would start as soon as possible on the first home and complete that around July. And then the other 2 would be completed in December and May of 2020. The reason for this is we're trying to get all 3 homes done in the next fiscal year. So in the next fiscal year 21. That helps us with our block grant timing. Let's see if there's anything else. The homes are estimated to be affordable to households earning about $40,000. And so that's about, what did I say, 47% of median income. That is the first one. Any questions on the Weber Housing Authority project?
Are these homes to be, I'm sorry, Chairman Nadolski.
Oh, I was just going to.
Are these
I was
homes
gonna
to
tee it
be
up for you.
purchased or leased?
They'll be eventually purchased. So they're designed to be purchased. It'll be either a lease purchase agreement or they'll determine to sell them outright. So they'll be one or the other. I think they're still trying to decide that.
So for those who weren't with us earlier, we had a pretty sporty conversation in our work session on this item. We took, because of the timing of when we received the transmittal for this item, because we discussed it for the first time before this meeting in our work session, and we're taking action here tonight or considering action. It's a little not entirely customary. But, what's that?
More than normal.
Yeah, but sometimes that happens. No big deal. But we had a good conversation. Councilmember White had some good comments that.
So can you describe for me how we're going to make sure that these stay affordable? I think one of the hardest things for me is that we have had a huge affordable housing discussion in general, and yet we are almost, it feels as almost that we're pushing this through very quickly in order to get houses built by next year. And I just, what if they don't get built by next year? I mean, is there a reason why we're pushing these through to finish them by December 31, 2020?
Yep. Yeah, it helps us with our block grant timing for the expenditure of funds and for the aggregation of projects that we do. So these projects would be done by Ogden City if we owned those lots. The reason that we're coming to the council is because the Housing Authority owns those lots, and we're doing a loan agreement, which isn't, we don't have a program guideline for that, so it requires a special approval. Whenever the homes are built, they're priced and designed for the neighborhood that they belong in. And so these homes are built to be affordable at market price. So they'll be affordable because of where they're at, how they're built, and how they're priced when they sell. And they're not going to be priced under the market. They'll be priced at the market, which is affordable. So, and that's just the nature of how projects are done. And that's how we've been doing them for the past 20, 30 years. So our market is affordable. Ogden has lots of affordable housing. These are neighborhoods which have affordable housing that's affordable to moderate and low-income people. So it's just based on the market where they're at.
And this,
Go ahead.
and this is my frustration about doing this tonight, because I have a million other questions. Is this within our purview to do that? Is it in our con plan?
Sure.
All of that stuff.
Mhm.
I mean, I just am, there's so many questions that I have had, and not having an opportunity to be able to ask this before tonight is really frustrating.
Oh, well, yeah. We have the ability to loan block grant to someone, the housing authority, to help them with their project. So I approached Andy because she came to me and said, we've got these lots. And I said, well, we have a way of helping you out, because she wanted to build homes. And so we just figured out a way to do it. It's perfectly fine. You can do this with the block grant. So I don't know what else to say. It's fine.
Okay. Any other questions or comments for Mr. Ogden? Mr.
Okay.
Ogden.
I'll move to the second one, then you can vote if you like, or if you want to vote now. It's fine.
We'll take action after you're done.
Okay.
With the second item, and
They're very similar in terms of we're proposing an agreement with Weber State University, again, a memorandum of agreement, and it's for the development of a house on the lot at 2807 Quincy Avenue. The city bought that lot in 2015 from it was a tax sale, basically, a property tax sale. And so the agreement would involve a partnership with Weber State University, and there's a number of other players that are interested, a number of departments at Weber State, and the Ogden Can Group is involved as a potential, an interested party, but a potential investor as well. The city would provide the building lot and then recover the value of the lot upon the sale of the home, and the lot's value is $35,000. The project that's proposed to be built is a demonstration project under the Solar Decathlon, Department of Energy Solar Decathlon competition. And it'll be a net zero home, a small, kind of a modest size home, 1,200 square foot home, 3 bedrooms, but it will have a lot of upgrades and amenities that save a lot of energy, and solar and that kind of thing, a lot of green things, so that the utility costs will be low, and it'll be a good demonstration project for that type of technology. It'll also give the students a great opportunity to have a project they can learn how to do these types of projects. And so anyway, they'd like to do these year after year. This project is really intended to be just a one-time project, so the approval is just for this project. There's a notation in the memorandum of agreement which calls for a cooperative agreement. That cooperative agreement really is just the administrative rules for accomplishing this house. So it's not something that you necessarily need to approve. It's just we're going to work out some details and sign an agreement as to how we work on the pro forma of the project and who does what administratively and that kind of thing. I think that's probably all I need to say on that. Is there any other comments?
Thanks. Any questions or comments from Mr. Ogden?
I just have one clarifying comment.
Okay.
In the packet, it says that the lot is currently estimated around 40,000.
Yes.
Is 35,000 the firm price?
Yes, we actually had it approved since appraised since this transmittal was written.
Okay.
Did you say that this lot was acquired through a tax sale?
Yes.
From the county?
Yes.
And how much did we pay for it?
It was about $28,000.
Thank you.
Actually, 29.
What year was that?
15.
Okay.
Can we have time and date on the? No. Chair, Ward, if this is a successful project, will that be the opening door for other projects to come, working with Weber State?
Sure. They'd like to do projects every year if they can. And so we'll hopefully work out some bugs and maybe come back and see if we can do it again.
Okay.
I do want to, I mean, I know we had a pretty good conversation about it already, but I do want to commend you for reaching out to the other anchor institutions in the community. As an anchor institution in the city, Ogden City, I mean, we play a really important role in housing. And so I always want to encourage and never discourage those kinds of partnerships. So
great.
Thank you for doing that. I think we have more conversations to come. I mean, we have been hearing about affordable housing for a couple months now. And so we have a ton of questions and information on our mind. And so when this one does come to us, this is clearly one of the tools that we have.
Right in the crosshairs.
Right there. And, you know, crosshairs maybe not the best. You know, we're not looking to shoot this thing down. It's one of the tools we have as a city to affect affordability of housing. And so I think we do look forward to actually having more conversations with a little bit more time. But hopefully we can still encourage the partnership that you started.
Yeah, great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Anything else for Mr. Ogden?
Okay. Thanks.
Word, sorry, a very quick question. So the MOA references $40,000. Do we need to have an amendment to that to
It
reflect
says approximately, I
35,000?
believe.
It does say approximately, but I just didn't know if you wanted the exact figure in
It's
there.
fine. Subject to appraisal, and the
Okay.
appraisal's been done, so we happen to know what it
Perfect.
is.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Amy.
Chair Nadolski, you ready for a motion?
On which one? The Weber Housing or the Weber State Housing?
The first one, Weber Housing Authority.
I believe so, yeah.
I do have one question real quick, just for just
Absolutely.
for you, Chair.
Absolutely.
That money that's going to come back to us, do we do a budget opening for that? Do we have to, or that just automatically go in?
Normally, it would require a budget opening, but does the MOA allow it to occur without the budget opening? I guess
I could be wrong. From what I understand, it just goes back into the housing program
it's just
fund.
the housing fund. Because the hope was
Yeah,
to
it's
make
program
it programmatic, right?
income.
It comes back to us the same way all of our other investments do. It just goes back into the budget as a normal process.
Just like it would on the other project that
on
you were-
any other
your staff were
project,
doing.
just goes back in the budget.
Okay.
Perfect.
And I just
Thanks.
have one other quick question for clarification. The Weber State University land is not using any CBDG.
Yeah, it's not a federally
funding.
assisted project, right?
It is not, correct?
Not.
Thanks. Okay. Anything else? All right. Thanks, Ward.
No, I'm ready.
Sorry, bud. Okay, back to Councilmember Lopez.
Sorry, I just have one more quick
no,
clarification. So, per some discussion in the work session, I'd handed out some possible motion language, but the city attorney sent you some updated language if you wanted to look at tweaking that. It looks like Ward helped to clarify that this is just for the one single project. There is some language in the resolution that's a little confusing, so that's an option if you wanted to clarify that it's just
Hold on
for
a second.
this.
So did you email that to us? Or,
The city attorney did, and I'm happy to provide that
got it.
verbally. Just didn't want the old language utilized.
So there was a question as to whether amendment would be necessary because there is some concern that the cooperative agreement went beyond this particular project. But I think as Ward made clear, and from what I'm reading in the agreement, it just is for this particular project.
Okay. Thank you, Amy, for hustling on that, and Gary for your advice. So it sounds like the substitute language that we had prepared isn't necessary.
Correct. That's my impression.
Okay. That's the legal interpretation, and now it's on the record. So, I think
All right, with that, Chair Nadolski, I'd like to make a motion to adopt proposed resolution 2019-23.
I second it.
we have a motion by Councilmember Lopez, seconded by Councilmember Stevens to adopt proposed resolution 2019-23. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Stevens?
Aye.
Councilmember White?
No.
Councilmember Blair?
Aye.
Councilmember Heyer?
Aye.
Councilmember Lopez?
Aye.
Chair Nadolski?
Aye. That passes. Councilmember White.
Yeah, and I've stated this a couple of times tonight already, and just, it's put both Ward and myself in an awkward position of not being able to answer questions, and he's done a great job, and there's probably another ton of questions rolling around in my head, and if I just had another week or so to understand what we were doing, and be able to ask some more questions. It's one of those where it's an unfortunate vote only because I think the project is a very good project. So it is not a vote of not confidence of the project. It is a vote of, once again, the process. So.
Yep. And actually my vote's kind of similar. It's a vote in support of the partnership and for the project. I do hope, I do wish we have more time for these. But I also recognize sometimes work schedules get jammed up like this. So I'm comfortable supporting the project and letting good things happen and coming back for more discussion in the future. Okay, we can entertain action on item 7B, 2 little I as well.
Chair Nadolski, I would make a motion then that we adopt resolution 2019-24.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Heyer, second by Councilmember Blair to adopt proposed resolution 2019-24. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember White?
No.
Councilmember Blair?
Aye.
Councilmember Heyer?
Aye.
Councilmember Lopez?
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens?
Aye.
Chair Nadolski?
Aye. That passes. Good.
Well, yeah, and once again, it is nothing against the project. It's going to be an awesome project, and Weber State's got some great things going for that. But just it's that same thing, not enough time to be able to really dig into it. So.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Thanks, Ward, for sticking it through on that.
And thanks, Ward, for putting up with my cantankerous mood tonight. Yeah.
She should thank us all.
Okay. I think Andy Beatles and Jen Bodine, appreciate those guys being with us as well. Okay, next item on our agenda is public comment. If you care to address the council on items on any subject, now is your time. State your name and limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Ralph Price, 636 East 6th Street. First of all, I want to say congratulations on saying no. And this project sounds like a good thing, but I'd like to see Wade come in here and talk about something about everything that's talked about for affordable housing is way out of the reach for the homeless, way out of the reach for the people that are dispersed. And I'd like to see Ogden City Housing, Weber Housing Authority come in here and talk about what they want to build to be able to take care of that problem. There's no such thing at all that you're going to be able to afford any of these homes. There's no such thing at all any apartment they build is going to be able to take that. They talk about having 25 beds of emergency housing right now. I've got 25 people in hotels right now from my outreach program. And my beds are full. Theirs aren't. I'd like them to come on in here and talk about getting more beds for emergency housing for the homeless, more people that are diverse situations. That young man that, by the way, Yate Dene, my grandmother is Navajo, so I just want to know that we should be a person of Indian descent on the diversity board, not have to go to Betty White or Betty. What's her name? Betty Sawyer and everything. I know a black guy that knows a Indian that on the diversity board. Let's get an Indian on the board and let's go ahead and have them represented. And I think that one of the things that appalls me about this whole process right here is week after week I come in here and I join you. I think it's going to be a great thing for Ogden, great thing for the students of Weber State and everything to have these type of things. But day after night, I roll around and I see, I'll take you to camp with 17 people right over by the river right now. 9 of them kids and everything that could use a place. I don't have enough money to get any more than that. We moved 9 families into apartments, Sunchase and Park Avenue and everything this last week. That's why that judge was so happy about talking. That boy that was right there was 2 of the boys that I brought to you guys to city council there right there, and this young man. And we moved 9 people into homes. There's a young lady and everything. She's one year away from having her master's degree in education. We got a meeting come to Thursday at Ann Milner's. Put together, we're going to be talking to these presidents of the college down here, vice presidents of Weber, and we're looking to go ahead so we can have these people dream like we do. Instead of dreaming about, okay, I wonder if I'm going to get called out on a piece mill job. Why not? Let's go ahead. We got talented welders, talented people in computer programming that are sleeping in the parks and everything right now. Let's give them an education. They become journeymen. They become apprentice. They go for careers. That will change the specter of things. This weekend, we had a chance to save one lady that was going to be kicked out of Tower View Apartments over here. Her things say we're going to be just thrown away. Right now, she's down in Motel 6, room 102, and everything because got the NRN. Drew called me, the manager. I used to live there, and he wanted to see what he could do with compassion. He allowed me to bring trucks in there. We put all the stuff in the front of the storage shed that we have, and we paid for her room for 3 days. I don't know what we're going to do after that, but I just booked it for 3 more, and I'm leaving it in God's hand. I just would like to see these people come in and they talk about the people that are hurting. That's the homeless. That's the people that are in diverse situations. That's the people with low incomes, not medium incomes. And let's build something for them.
Thanks, Ralph.
All right?
I think you are getting at the heart of the disagreement there is that there's disagreement as to what is and what isn't affordable. That's for sure. Hi.
Hello, y'all know my name by now. I'm Sophia Garza. I'd like to start with a couple things. Since we are recognizing Native American Heritage Month, let's do a quick land acknowledgement. We are on Eastern Band Shoshone land right now. So, just take a second, see how that feels on your body. Secondly, let me get my thoughts in order. Well, a few things that I need to get out of the way. Number one, our group is in no way trying to discuss or has been discussing the incident with Giovanni Mercado. We've been moving forward. We want to talk about police reform. We don't want to talk about that specific incident. So I would like to state that clearly on the record. We are talking about moving forward. We are not talking about that specific incident because, frankly, there are many more incidents beyond that, and we don't want to talk about those. We want to talk about how we can make it better, how we can make Ogden safer. And secondly, I would like to hear what y'all's thoughts on our one sheet that was sent out was. The only council member that got back to me was council member Chaburka, who's not here right now, but I would like to thank her for reaching back out to me. And what your thoughts on the book are currently. If you've started reading it, we would love to hear from you. And a couple other things. I never thought as an activist, this is just congratulating you guys and congratulating that district court. I never thought as an activist that I would be smiling and nodding along with the words of a judge and the way that he runs his courtroom. So I would like to just thank you guys for keeping that district court open. I was hearing amazing things because you know what? Along with police reform comes restorative justice. And it is great to hear that restorative justice work is being done here in Ogden. Because, a lot of those people who go through Judge Suki's court, I guarantee you're not going to see them again because restorative justice works. If you look behind the crime and look at the individual and their situation, you can help them for the better and for the long term. And that benefits our community as a whole. And additionally, I would like to meet with any and all of you. I know that I extended that invitation in the email. Nobody has gotten back to me. It's been 3 weeks. Y'all love to talk about how you would love to talk with us. Let's see that energy when I reach out to you outside of council meetings. I've sent those emails. Mayor Caldwell, I sent an email to you, and I followed up with you in person at that last mayoral debate. And you told me you would get back to me in that email. You still have not gotten back to me. It's been 3 weeks. And as you can tell, my tone is way different tonight than it's been any other time I've addressed y'all, because I know things don't work quickly, but it's been a couple months and I would like to see some action. And whether that action is just y'all emailing me back or y'all meeting up with me for coffee, just anything at this point to show that you are listening, that you do care, that you want to be a leader, that you want to make Ogden better and safer for all of its residents. Because you know what, the police are not above their community. They're a part of their community. And I don't see that reflected in the OPD's relationship with its community and with the citizens. So thank you.
Thank you.
honorable members of the Ogden City Council. My name is Dan Ropolato. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to present my concerns regarding the Ogden City ordinance permitting vacation rentals in residential areas. I do understand the popularity and appeal by some to rent out their home nightly for a fee which generates additional income. Properly managed with consenting neighbors, I can envision their benefit in certain circumstances. Recently, a property close to my home sold. The new owner immediately began operating it as an owner-occupied Airbnb. The impact of having a vacation rental supported by a billion-dollar industry located on our doorstep is already having negative effects. Our neighborhood has become the new nightly destination for 20 to 30 weekly guests. Most people in our neighborhood know and recognize each other. Before their Airbnb, it is easy to spot someone or something that seemed out of place. As a parent, it's concerning not to know the background of random people coming or going day or night. Increased traffic, congestion, noise, and parking issues. How many guests are returning to the area impaired after a night out of town? I've had people knocking on my door looking for the Airbnb, walking around my property. This seems like a convenient way for someone with dubious intentions to case the neighborhood. What is going to happen to our property values? If I was a potential buyer of a property, it wouldn't be my first choice to buy a property next to an Airbnb. Why deal with the potential issues? Owner-occupied vacation rentals are currently unrestricted in number. How many are going to invade the area? I think we can do better. The current permit process would benefit if, in addition to city requirements, consider neighborhood input. These venues are popping up unannounced, literally overnight, making a profit in the heart of neighborhoods. Give property owners a voice and some control over what happens next to their home. Looking at other Utah communities dealing with this industry, I found generally vacation rentals are prohibited in residential areas statewide. However, because of lax enforcement driven by Utah State House Bill 253, they certainly exist. I applaud the Ogden City Council for at least addressing this issue with the current ordinance. I like a provision that the City of St. George implemented concerning vacation rentals after having experienced issues with this industry. Residents within 300 feet of a proposed vacation rental must give written consent before they're allowed to operate. This could be a win-win for the community and residents, protecting residents in areas that don't want them, reducing potential conflict among neighbors. Owners of vacation rentals would be compelled to manage them properly and responsibly, since ultimately their neighbors could decline to support them next time their permit came up for renewal. I truly appreciate your time and consideration. Thank you for allowing me to present our concerns.
Thank you, Mr. Ropolato.
Mr. Ropolato, would you leave your comment with us? So
Absolutely, you bet.
That would be wonderful.
I should
It was
give it to
very well
Brandon.
crafted. Thank you.
Thanks.
Council members, Malik Thayo, Ogden. First of all, I think it's a great thing acknowledging the Native Americans this evening. I think we need to start working towards taking it to the next level, which is to remove Columbus Day altogether from Ogden. We don't need to celebrate a land thief, a violator, a murderer, or an oppressor. That's outside of Ogden's scope. I believe it doesn't represent who we are. I don't think we should be celebrating Columbus. He was not the first to discover the so-called New World. If you want to learn more about that, you can Google pre-Columbian exploration and you'll find out more about it. Just following up on what changes in de-escalation or non-lethal force the council's been discussing. I've heard the council members and the mayor say that you've discussed it behind closed doors for several hours. I want to know what kind of changes you're thinking about implementing or what kind of ideas have been coming forward. As Sophia said, we don't want to discuss anything about the shooting. That's not what we're here for. As a matter of fact, we've never mentioned it one council session. And we do feel that the lawsuit is being used as a tool to halt any type of community dialogue. Also, I want to follow up on the book, see if any section of the book had any type of impact on any of the council members. And I never thought I'd be saying this either. The Judge Stuckey, who was just here, especially as a Black Lives Matter activist, it's probably unprecedented for anybody in Black Lives leadership to actually say they liked a particular judge and actually believed in every single thing they said while they were up here. So if he should be the face for judges and his courtroom should be the standard for all courts in Ogden. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, my name is Jeff Jensen, 1483 22nd Street.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Johnson, council members. I'm asking you to lower the speed limit on 22nd Street. The children are there. We have ample walking, pedestrians, many people, older people walking, and a school nearby, a church on 22nd Street and Taylor. And the speed limit is too fast. I'm asking for a lower speed limit of 25 miles an hour and a four-way stop sign installed on 22nd and Taylor, much like 26th Street and 28th Street have now. No other street above Harrison has a 35 mile an hour speed limit other than 24th Street, which is a state highway. And to add to the general ambience of the neighborhood, increase property values, it's a good thing. We have the hiking trails above people use. It's becoming more and more children orientated. The kids moved out, it seemed like 20 years ago. Now they've come back. I've talked to neighbors and people along 22nd Street and have not seen any opposition to this idea whatsoever. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hey, good evening. I second that with Malik. Removal of Columbus Day, it makes me very uncomfortable. The day brings about. But yeah, I just wanted to say second that. Removal of Columbus Day, Indigenous Peoples Day, preferred. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Ed Mackner. I have a few things I want to give to you today that my wife and I bought for the council. And let me just see if I can get it here.
Can you give them to Brandon for us?
They're, I'll take this for you.
Yeah, if you can
Thank
give
you
her.
very much. They're books that were presented by Paul Hawkins at the Weber State Inter Mountain Summit on climate change. So you can get them on the web if you. I didn't get everyone one, but you can just. They're not a book you need to read, but they're a book you can refer to. They're a reference book, and so I think the page I was thinking about was the amount of carbon dioxide emitted in 2016, an estimate, 36 gigatons. Now, a giga is a billion. So if we look at that, and it's in the book, an Olympic-sized pool has 500,000 gallons of water. It's 164 feet by 82 feet by 7 feet. And 400,000 of those Olympic-sized pools equals 1 gigaton. And if it's 36 that are estimated emitted, that would be about 14,400,000 pools. So that's the amount of carbon dioxide and water and global warming gases that are being emitted. Now, I was a chemistry teacher, and I have here some water with an indicator, bromothymol blue. And I'm not going to drink it, but I brought a straw. And I want to show you what happens when we blow carbon dioxide, which we emit because we're alive. I'll show you what happens to the solution. It'll turn acid.
Are we going to be okay?
Yeah.
I got a bad grade in chemistry. Okay. Let the record reflect these levels.
It's acid. So what happens to carbon dioxide when it's emitted? into the atmosphere, it goes into the water, it goes into the oceans, it goes into our lakes, and it acidifies the water and also on the trees. So when we see carbon dioxide emitted, it's not just something that's, I'm done. I just wanted to say that it's a toxic gas, and we need to kind of think about the fact that we've got to remediate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's pretty good.
We want to thank you for the book, though.
Yeah, we've got another book we're working on. Then
Oh no, this is
Then
not
we'll
something
get
you need to read. Just look through it.
Well, actually, there's
it's a plan.
it's got bike infrastructure in it, Mayor. I mean, there's some relevance in here.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay. Anybody else care to address the council?
My name's Chance Prophet. I'm a Weber State student. But my question for you guys is about House Bill 411 and sort of kind of piggybacking off of what he just said. What are the conversations with that? Are you opting to pledge into it? And if so, are you going to commit to it or not?
Okay. Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll be reconsidering again, rediscussing in another work session in November. I think
It has a December the 31st deadline.
yeah, it does, but we'll have one more conversation in a work session, and then we'll follow it up with consideration for action probably the following week. So either before the end, then we'll be in Thanksgiving, so sometime early December.
Yeah, it's the first week in December.
First week in December. Thank you. Yep, you bet. Actually, I've been getting a lot of questions about that.
And the council's
email
work
too.
session discussion will be on the 26th.
Okay. Tentatively scheduled?
Or not the 19th. The 19th. Oh my goodness. Yes.
19th.
And that's scheduled. So the
Okay.
council's already had a work session discussion. They're going to have another one this time with Rocky Mountain Power presenting.
Okay.
And then following that, we'll have the chance to consider a resolution.
Perfect. Thank you, Amy. Okay, anybody else? Okay, we had a few questions. So sorry, I didn't write you back on the email. I'll get back to you on that. But comments on the book, I'm personally working on it. I had another book that a friend recommended I read called White Fragility, so I had to wrap that one up. And now I'm working on the new Jim Crow, and I think it's going to be pretty interesting. I don't want to put Councilmember Heyer on the spot, but I think he might be the only council member that has finished it.
I finished the summary.
Finished the summary. We
I did not finish the
okay.
book.
Okay. Well, he does jewelry.
Audiobook.
Yeah, so he has his. So he listened to it while he did his work, and we actually talked about it out here at the parking lot after a meeting. And we're going to have a lot more conversations. Councilmember Heyer is going to Guadalajara with Councilmember Lopez and I for a cultural immersion experience that Councilmember Lopez is going to help us go on. So we're doing that on our own time and on our own dime. But I think it's going to be a really good opportunity for us to talk about that book as well, and to talk about a lot of other things peripheral to, but and beyond that book as well. So, the speeding issues on the East Bench, we continue to get one request after another, and we just have a lot of East Bench traffic challenges. I don't know if the administration cares to comment
Those
on that.
all go to the traffic engineer who has to conduct a study on that. So they put the pipes out, and it takes a little bit of time for them to study that and then make their recommendations. So yeah, that's something, every one of those requests we get in, we pass that along to the engineer, and we appreciate your comments.
I would like to piggyback on that. With the new four-way stop on 26th, can someone just talk about how that came about?
In Fillmore?
Yeah, 26th in Fillmore, yeah.
So they moved it from 26th on Fillmore to Lake.
Yeah.
Because of the concern of the jog in the road. They felt like they needed to stop the traffic at a different point.
They being?
Our traffic engineer.
Okay.
So that was, they studied the road. That was a recommendation. They studied it because they were putting in bike lanes. And they were with putting those bike lanes in, they just studied it again and said that was ridiculous where they put the stop sign. It should have been a lake because of that jog. So that's the reason. One other comment on the 22nd one. They did a study 2 or 3 years ago on 22nd Street. And there's been a four-way stop talked about at Taylor and 22nd numerous times. I do not think that will ever happen because on wintry days, that hill incline when you hit Taylor is such that if you're going up the hill, you may slide back down the hill. So I don't know that one can be considered. The speed, we'll have them go back and do again. But the stop sign on 22nd would be a problem if you got caught on the hill. Sometimes cars have a hard time getting up there in the winter anyway.
So one thing I've learned in these traffic, there's just one after another in the East Bench. I think it's kind of reflective of our increased growth, and traffic has to go somewhere. But I know that our traffic engineers, instead of, like, I remember in my neighborhood, we're like, we need a stop sign right there, and they're like, well, that's not quite how it works. They look at the intersection and then say, we will evaluate like 3 alternatives, and then they'll select the alternative that is the safest, and they go through the study process. So even if the stop sign isn't an option, maybe there's another option that can help.
And they'll look at that when they study the road.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Chair, I'd be interested in that study also, especially the speed limit. But if there's any other options that we can look at on 22nd Street and that, it would be very helpful.
Yeah. There's a lot of people in my district that know where I live, and they see me mowing my lawn a lot because I like to mow my lawn. And if there's one item that they stop at my house the most often to tell me about, it's traffic issues on the East Bench. It's just intersection after intersection, and it's just one after another. So I don't know if we have a comprehensive plan for addressing traffic flow on the entire East Bench over time, but it seems like there's a need if that's something you guys would be willing to discuss with us.
That might be well if we had a presentation from the traffic engineer to see how the process works.
Yeah.
I get those also, and it would help me to interact with constituents that come to us, is understanding how the traffic engineer, the process that it has to go through.
That's right. You had one recently in your district that
we did.
You were working on?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be helpful. Thanks. Okay. Hope I addressed everything.
I think we ought to look at the diversity, Mr. Chair, in looking at if there's a possibility of introducing the Indian group to that group. Even if we have to enlarge the group by one, that would be helpful to us.
Yeah. Thanks.
I think there's a lot of diverse groups that may or may not be represented, so we have to be careful on how large it gets.
The nice thing was as that was formed, everybody got their voice heard. The natives did, as well as everybody else that showed up. And I can't think of anybody that didn't get represented in the initial discussions. Maybe there was, but there was a lot of people that came to talk about that. So
I think it is something that Vice Chair Chaburka and I think you were actually in the last joint leadership meeting, talked with the mayor and CAO about is we need to be better about actually reaching out and engaging the Diversity Commission in meaningful ways. So that's something that we all agreed on and hope to do as well. Any comments by the mayor tonight?
Sure. Book's on my desk as well, and we have forwarded that email around, so it's received a lot of attention. So we appreciate you coming and your comments tonight. One that wasn't questioned was VRBO and issues with VRBO and Airbnb, and that's something we've worked with the state legislature on quite a bit, and they've given some very narrow rules on what a city can and can't do to help govern some of that, but we'd be more than happy to share some of that with you if you want to leave your contact information, just so you know what we're working with and what some of our tools might be. And then I just wanted to publicly call out somebody you all know very well, Jenny Scothern. Today was her last day as the executive director of GOAL, and she's done some amazing things for that organization over the last 9 years. So I want to thank her for her service and everything she's done leading that organization that does a lot in our community. Thanks.
Yeah, and she's being replaced by our former deputy chief of fire, Eric Bauman. So they'll be in good hands there too. Comments by council members.
I just have a quick comment. I'm listening to the book, and I'm only on chapter 3. It is to listen to it is not quite as easy as to read it, because the woman that's narrating it is a very slow talker, and so I am on chapter 3. But part of that in the first few chapters, what I have learned is a lot about the court system, and what I think is really amazing, and I'm glad you pointed it out again tonight, is that I think our court system is doing some amazing things with them, just outside the box thinking, and hopefully trying to break that cycle as well. And so it's a good book to. It's probably better to read it than to listen to it, but I'm in the car a lot, so I'm listening to it. So I appreciate that. So thank you for giving it out and giving us the opportunity to read it.
Yeah, Marcia commutes to Salt Lake now these days, so she's got some time.
Yeah.
The audio book's only 12 hours long.
Yeah, I think it's 19 hours long, actually.
Is it 19?
I don't know. It's a lot of hours.
I opted for the 50-minute version.
Oh.
I'm kind of a Reader's Digest kind of a guy, you know.
Yeah, no, but it does, and I think our justice court's doing a phenomenal job based upon at least the first 3 chapters I've been reading.
Yeah, I was glad to hear that feedback about Judge Stuckey too. Yeah. Anybody else?
I'm read through the summary on it, and it's has some good information there in that aspect there. I also like to emphasize that it would be worthwhile for us to work in a work session with the district court to find out exactly how they operate and what procedures they go through and who they are actually helping and how they help them, and that would be beneficial for us to understand that. I want to thank Ralph Price for helping with the homeless. That is an issue that we need to address positively in addressing the needs that part of our population has in that aspect there. And the other aspect is that with our partnership of housing, we had 2 resolutions tonight that we partnershiped with 2 groups that helped out our housing in that aspect there. Maybe it wasn't done exactly to call, but I think in the long run it's going to benefit us overall. And I echo what Councilman Heyer said about the cannabis. You know, they painted us into a corner, and it was hard for us to move but the federal government needs to step up and address those type of issues in that aspect there. Weber State by 10.
There it is.
There it is. Okay, anybody else?
Yeah, I will go ahead and come clean. I took the book home, and then I started a kitchen remodel, so I know it's in my home. But like my plates and silverware, I'm just not sure where it is. So when I start putting stuff back together, I'll get back to it. I started a little bit, but then other projects took over. And then I was running the clock today for Vice Chair Chaburka, so I didn't get it. I wasn't as diligent writing names down, but I would like to thank the gentleman that talked about the VRBOs and the speed limits on 22nd. I know those are 2 ways to help neighborhoods feel safe and secure and to maintain the integrity of those neighborhoods. And so we do have some issues in both of those areas, and we'll see what we can do to work through those. But thanks for bringing those concerns to us.
Thanks. Anybody else?
I feel more than compelled to comment about the book because everybody has. And I just got to say, I haven't started reading it either, but I had a very out-of-the-box idea that I think at some point we as a council could do a little book club reading, and we can read some of it together.
Well, I think you're onto something there.
And we can have some conversation about it, not just that book, but other books that are of interest to the body.
Let me know. I've got a whole reading list.
and I have question. I'm sorry, it's not a question, but it's for the gentleman. I forgot your name, but
Mr. Mackner.
I don't know if you paid for these out of pocket, but if you did,
they're a gift to you.
I would be happy to. I like to keep this for me, and I'll be happy to reimburse you if you like.
It's not necessary.
Okay, all right. And I'm sorry, we can engage in conversation. I apologize, but when we're done here, if you stick around or when I see you again, I'll come and talk to you. I'm sorry.
I'll stick around.
Thank you.
You did kind of set the poor guy up there.
What's that?
That's okay. Anything else?
No, I'm good.
Okay. I think.
Oh yeah,
I like your. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, one last thing. To the Weber State University student about the HB, what was it? 411. I can tell you, for a long time, a lot of people have been asking me about these. I think all of us, and I've been telling people that I already know how I'm going to vote on that, and I'm really hoping that we can adopt that resolution here. So that's just me personally saying that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I liked your idea on the book club. I think I saw the mayor volunteer to host the first one.
Usually you like the people that are in your book club.
Snap. Ouch. Okay.
I am in one of those moods.
Yeah, a little snarky tonight. No, I thank the mayor for catching what I missed on the VRBO comment, because Mr. Robelata and I have had long conversations over breakfast on that issue specifically, so thanks for catching that. Thank you, Amy, for all the work you did on that resolution question we had tonight. Kind of caught you by surprise, and you pretty much worked all night on it. So thank you, Amy, and thank you, Gary and Janine. I guess as it relates to the email I didn't write, which I need to reply to, but I spent my day today at a conference put on by the Ogden Weber Chamber, and it was a conference on empowering women in the workforce. And the theme of the conference really was unconscious bias. And coincidentally, I was actually asked to give a talk on the topic, and that not because I'm an expert in it at all. In fact, my first slide was a slide of a bunch of white men in suits, and there I am, a white guy in a suit. But the point being that, unconscious bias is a thing that we need to be talking about, and we need to be identifying within ourselves. And the theme of the conference really was about putting in the work. It was kind of a call to action for all of us to look deep within ourselves, to understand how unconscious does or doesn't affect our day-to-day lives and our decisions that we make. But the keynote speaker, or the main speaker at the end, was Wade Davis. He came to visit from Los Angeles, and he was the first openly gay NFL player who actually played football here at Weber State with, and I had the honor of getting to know him there on that team, and he is a remarkable speaker. And really what he was pressing for everybody to do is to go home and to do the work, to go on your own journey of self-exploration, and to think long and hard about the tendencies that we have and why we have them, and where they come from, and how best to combat them. And so I appreciate that you guys have brought us to the book. I'm absolutely reading it, and it is a heavy book for sure, but I'll get it done because I'm in the mode of doing the work. And so if you were asking about, I want to be candid, you're asking about action. This whole experience has shown me that that's where our action needs to begin, is within ourselves. We've got work to do. And so I appreciate the conversation you and I had in the parking lot about it. Those are conversations people just don't know are happening, but they're happening because you shared the book. So thank you. Okay. We still have another meeting and a few items and a couple staff members waiting patiently. So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn from this meeting.
So move.
Second. We have a motion to adjourn by Councilmember Lopez, second by Councilmember Heyer to adjourn. This is a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you, guys. Okay, let's see here. I know we're not done. Yeah.
We just.
Pleasure to meet.
I'm just going to grab a drink of water. Be right back.
That's fine. That was a gift. That was a gift. Yes, so we can afford it. And thank you very much for the offer. The book is just big.
Hey. Yeah.
I think
I was going to say, if only we knew somebody on that street that was speeding.
our council office.
If only we knew someone on that street that was speeding. Luis. Did we lose Rich? Nope. Okay. Luis.
Oh.
I don't think there should be. Yeah, they should all be 25.
This is the DL11, so we keep on.
Is this our new stuff?
This is a revised.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Good thinking. Thanks. Okay. Are we good to continue?
Please.
Okay, please. Good? Okay. Welcome back, everybody, to the Special Redevelopment Agency meeting of October 22nd, 2019. Let the roll call reflect that all board members are present, except for Vice Chair Chaburka, who has asked to be excused. The first item on our agenda is approval of minutes for the closed executive session of February 19th, 2019. Board Member Stevens.
Yes, Chair, they're correct.
For the special meeting of May 7th, 2019, and the closed executive session of May 7th, 2019, Board Member White.
Yes, Chair. Yes, Chair, those are correct, and I make a motion that we approve the minutes.
Second.
We have a motion by Board Member White, second by Board Member Blair to approve the minutes as presented. This is a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Thanks, you guys. Reports from administration, the D.L. Evans loan parameters, presented by Brandon Cooper. I think you grew that beard waiting this entire time, huh? Sorry, man.
It's been a fun night. You guys are troopers. So thanks for my 15 minutes of fame. We'll have a couple of things to discuss tonight. The first item for your consideration is proposed resolution 2019-15, which authorizes the executive director to obtain a loan from D.L. Evans Bank not to exceed $1.7 million for the refinance of some debt that is secured against property known as the Rite Aid project. So if you will bear with me just for a moment, I'll give you some context, and then we'll talk about the structure of the loan. This is a little bit unusual in that we typically bring a loan document for your consideration. In this case, we have some timing issues as it relates to the existing debt that is due versus the time that we have with you all with these meetings. And so we felt like we could accomplish what we needed to accomplish with what we consider somewhat of a parameters resolution. So that's what we'll be looking at in just a moment. As you know, this is the Rite Aid site. This has been an area of interest for us since about 2015. It's centrally located in the East Central neighborhood, and it provides a substantial amount of area for development. So we've been looking at this in a number of ways. This is just a rendering of what we considered in 2015, and that kind of goes through the years. We've looked at the site from a lot of different angles, what we could do with it from a commercial basis, residential, mixed use, those kind of things. Here's another rendering that we did in 2017, which was largely residential, but more institutional, large-scale apartments. We've kind of come off of that to look at something a little bit more downscaled, more neighborhood-specific. So this is the concept that we're kind of working from now. However, in the time that we've been working, the notes that were secured in 2015 are now coming due. This map kind of gives you an idea of where that land is located and what that debt looks like. That green area is the single parcel where the two large buildings are located, and that note is $1,013,250, and that debt is due on the 12th of November. The blue is what is considered the wheelwright property, or the old wheelwright property. $359,240 is due on the 11th. And then that orange piece is a small piece that was purchased, and that is due a little bit later, January 20th, but we would like to take care of it with this loan as well, and that's $125,023. So what is before you for your consideration is the resolution setting the parameters. Again, the loan amount would be not to exceed 1.7. If you add all of those numbers up that I just listed, it's actually about a little under 1.5. But again, this is setting a box, so to speak, in terms of what might be available. And so we expect to borrow about 1.5, which is essentially the amount owed plus the fees of closing. But the parameters are 1.7 to give us some flexibility to get this done. The maximum interest would be the Wall Street Journal prime rate as it's published at the time of closing, plus 0.5%. That's the minimum rate, so it will never go below that. The maximum rate is, this is actually an old slide. I sent you some newer slides. It's actually 8%. I think you have it in your packet.
We have a potential revised substitute resolution.
There's a substitute resolution.
I'll tee up the substitute
Thank you.
information that you'll present.
Yep. Connected outs. It's the one that I sent earlier today. So as he's looking at that, I can describe. So the maximum interest rate would be 8%. So again, the minimum is the prime plus 0.5%. The maximum that it could adjust to over the term of the loan would be 8%. We would have a quarterly interest-only payment schedule, so it would be no more frequent than that. So it couldn't go to a monthly payment or something like that. The balloon payoff would actually be 5 years, not 3, as it said here. Hence the substitute resolution. The fees adjust to $10,000, so not to exceed $10,000. There we go. Thank you. Appreciate it. So again, the $10,000 fee cap is to accommodate the 1.5 or up to 1.7. And the loan would be secured against the actual property, so there's no other additional collateral that would be required or could be required. So thank you for working through that technicality. Those are the terms. Again, this is a unique kind of an approach, but with those terms, we think we can go back to the bank and negotiate something that is within these terms very easily and be able to make those, actually close the loan and make those payments in time. So with that, I'll turn the time back over to you and be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Cooper?
What's the life of the zone or the loan?
5 years.
That's okay.
Joe, and Brandon, if you could just reiterate why we're doing a parameter loan instead of normally we do a loan. Can you just, again, say that for us?
Sure. We've actually been working on this for quite some time. The appraisal took a little bit longer. We were working out loan-to-value ratios and things like that. So with the due date of the existing notes, and the time that we've been working on this to where we could actually bring final loan documents, those two dates don't match up. So we needed to take a kind of a creative approach so that we can get the loan closed and be able to pay that debt before it's due.
Brandon, one other comment on that. The bank that we've been negotiating with is a relatively new bank to our state, and they were not on the approved list. They are now. So we had to wait a little bit for them to get on the approved list. That caused the shortening of the time frame.
Apparently doesn't help matters when we don't meet for another weeks either.
Yeah, syncing up schedules is always a fun challenge. Janine does a great job given our stressful demands.
It's magic.
Yeah.
But she pulls it off.
And you have also sought some outside financial counsel from our financial advisor, is that correct?
Correct. So we have a financial advisor, Laura Lewis, and anytime we take on new debt, then that has some potential effect on the other debt instruments we hold and just our financial situation at large. And so we look to her to give us feedback. We've obtained that feedback. We've also worked with our finance department on these terms. We worked with administration. And so I think we're at a point now where there wouldn't be any terms that would be surprising to anyone, nor would there be any loan covenants or conditions in the loan that would put us in jeopardy.
So paying off the debt, what does that do for our project up there or the property?
Well, it's a refinance, so we would still have debt secured against the property. It would actually just give us 5 more years to restructure that debt in a way that could be moved off to a developer. We could sell the property and actually obtain proceeds to pay the debt. It could be kind of built into a participation and incentive agreement where tax increment comes in and starts to have an effect on the debt. That was our original anticipation when we received seller financing from the sellers. And so this is just kind of deja vu of that. But we're getting very close to the development plan. We have development partners that are in place and willing to proceed. We still need to look at the establishment of an RDA and some other things to make this work, but we're getting very close. And so the 5 years with a refinance allows us more time to get this to work out.
So at the end of the 5 years, will we have another payment then, or?
At the end of the 5 years, we would have the balloon. So we would pay interest only, and I don't have an amortization schedule for you here, but we would have an interest only payment of no more frequent than quarterly with the balloon of the principal amount.
Any other questions from Mr. Cooper? Okay. Thank you, Brandon. Appreciate it. Okay, we will accept public input on this item. If you have comments for the board related to the DL Evans loan parameters, now is your opportunity to address the board. Patient man, Travis.
Travis Pate. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I saw their new thing in the old Safeway building out at DL Evans in South Ogden. So I'd hope that they actually put a presence in Ogden if we were doing business with them as a business. And then with regards to the parameters, I think extending the loan and getting us a neighborhood and other things back into that area, the design and other concepts besides just selling the property outright, that we say, hey, we want a full service grocery store, not just a kitschy little one. But the little ones have been making a big difference for us. So I compliment Rancho Markets and those others that have come into the neighborhood and filled a void that was needed, replacing Bush Market or later Woods Market, where my mom actually first started in Ogden. And so I think that having a tremendous market area, having an interplace for the onboard Ogden and transit area is vital. So I appreciate the work of the administration to get this done.
Thank you, Travis.
Thanks, Travis.
Anybody else? Okay, seeing no more, I'll entertain action.
Chair, I'd make a motion that we adopt Resolution 2019-15.
I second it.
Actually, maybe I should read my notes here a little better.
Perfect.
Yeah,
I would move that we substitute a revised Resolution 2019-15, adjusting the items that have been talked about.
Yep, which would incorporate that revised resolution, just to clarify, would incorporate the new terms and new parameters that were presented by Mr. Cooper. Appreciate the clarification.
Second that.
Okay. We have a motion to substitute a revised resolution 2019-15 by Councilmember Heyer, seconded by Board Member Heyer, seconded by Board Member Blair. This is a roll call vote.
I think it's a voice vote to substitute.
That's just a substitution.
Okay, this is a voice vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That passes. Thank you for that
Now I will
clarification.
make a motion that we adopt the substitute resolution 2019-15.
I second it.
Okay, we have a motion by Board Member Heyer, seconded by Board Member Stevens to adopt the substitute resolution 2019-15. This is a roll call vote.
Board Member Blair.
Aye.
Board Member Heyer.
Aye.
Board Member Lopez.
Aye.
Board Member Stevens.
Aye.
Board Member White.
Aye.
Chair Nadolski.
Aye, that passes. Thank you, Brandon. Appreciate you adjusting the parameters after our discussion last week. And we look forward to our administration negotiating an advantageous loan. Thank you. Okay, I think you're on deck again. Swift Building Sale Real Estate Purchase Contract.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for your patience on that substituted resolution. I actually have, if you'll bear with me, another substitute document that I'll get into in just a moment. Okay. And if you don't mind. Okay, great. So I think that's been submitted to you. Okay. Okay, so this discussion is proposed resolution 2019-16, which authorizes the executive director to enter into a real estate purchase contract for the sale of the Swift site. So what Brandon is handing out is the substituted document, which I'll explain in just a moment. In order to understand the context of the sale, I'd like to just cover a couple of things as it relates to the process that we've gone through for the record in terms of this entire area, both the track line area, which is the Union Stockyards, and the Swift Building, which is related. This is an aerial picture of 2013. This is an aerial picture of 2019. And so there's been some significant improvement of the area over the last few years. And it's something that we all can be proud of. What you see in that picture is really 5 new companies that have moved to the area. There's 4.8 miles of trails that are in that picture or to be built in that area. There's 9 new areas of open space that didn't exist before 2015. There's actually 2 brand new roads, a brand new water line, new infrastructure in terms of power and sewer. All of the existing blight that was there is gone, and we now have kind of unprecedented access to the river that wasn't there before via those squiggly trails that you see that are actually pedestrian easements, so public easements. So I think in terms of what we're trying to accomplish now, we have a really strong precedent and a lot of wind at our back as we go forward into the consideration of the Swift Building. The 2013 valuation of the 121-acre track line economic development area was a little over $11 million. With just the work that you have seen in the picture, not including the new buildings that are going up now, that valuation has increased to over $27 million as of last year. So the plan that we all set out to do in 2013 is working, and now the next step is really how do we deal with the Swift site? We've been talking about that question for quite some time. We've laid out a process on how to deal with the Swift. First came acquisition. The environmental cleanup was a known thing. Not necessarily in terms of its scope and magnitude, but we knew that once we acquired it, then that we would have a lot of work to do in terms of the cleanup. We're just now getting to the tail end of that work through the EPA partnership. We're looking to move to demolition, which would clear the building off the land, and that would give us a chance to assess the soil and groundwater underneath the building to determine if there's additional contamination that needs to be dealt with outside of the removal of the hazardous materials in the building. And then today's discussion and consideration is the sale of the property, and then comes the development of the site, building, and the infrastructure, which I'll talk about in just a moment. The reason why this has been on our radar is similar to those reasons why we approached the Union Stockyard in general, and that is to remove the blight condition that existed. In the case of the Swift Building, there was a significant risk to public health and safety. We found that out during our negotiation process in the acquisition phase. And so we've taken steps to figure that out. The job creation component is huge for us. In 2013, that picture I showed you, there was only one company operating there. It was Brentag. Again, we have 5 new companies. All of those companies are bringing jobs. We anticipate in our plan that we would have at least 500 jobs at that location when it's all built out. And so that's a significant improvement. Compatible use of the river was a major consideration both at the track line project and with Swift, allowing us to do river enhancements that we couldn't previously do. We also wanted to honor the unique character of the site, of the buildings, of the economic impact that stockyard had on Ogden City's history. It's the welcome mat of the city. So as you come back and forth over the viaduct, that icon of a building has a significant meaning, some good, some bad. And we wanted to see how we can leverage that in good ways. And lastly, looking at the Swift building specifically and the stockyards in general is part of the West Ogden Community Plan, something they are excited to see. This is just a picture of the riverbank work that is hopefully soon to start. That's a separate project, but we have received a number of different funds to conduct this work, and it looks at laying the riverbank back to provide access and additional improvements to be made later on. As you can see, it does encroach into the building, so the removal of the building would be necessary to perform this work to enhance the river. During our process of analysis in terms of what to do with the Swift building based on those objectives I've just listed, we asked ourselves, can it stay? Why, how, who, and how much? Those are the things that we looked at. I won't go into all of that data in terms of what we looked at, but condition was one of the major considerations of our proposal to remove the building. And I'll just go through these very quickly, but you can see that these are current pictures of the condition of the building as it sits today. And that's why we have had a zero tolerance rule of no one entering the building. EPA has taken their own precautionary measures as they've worked in the building, but those are floors that are caving in and holes that you see, walls that have fallen out, mold on the roof. So just a number of issues that really drove us to the conclusion that as amazing as this building once was, and as iconic as it might be in terms of its scale and prominence, there really isn't an amount of city subsidy available to make this thing pencil in a commercial environment. So the last question is really, what is the association of this building to the community? What's that relationship like? And as we looked at that and studied it, there are a number of folks that have family members that might have worked at the Swift site, that might have worked at the stockyards. And so we've tried to document that and to get some of those stories out there. But we realized that by and large, the general interaction between the building and the community is the Swift sign. We see it as we come and we go. It's there in the skyline. And so that really is the thing that people associate with. Very few people have been in the building. Very few people are left that were associated with the stockyards themselves or the meatpacking plant. And so we really think this is the significant part of the building, as well as the building's form and scale. And so those are the things that we took from that analysis and said, how can we mitigate those things and preserve them and honor them, even though we're tearing the building down? So what to do? The consideration tonight is to allow for the sale of the property after demolition and remediation has taken place to Atwater Infrastructure. That would also pave the way for the Weaver River restoration projects that I've briefly described, and we would keep some design controls as pursuant to the drawings that I'll show you, and also we would look to find ways to appreciate the historical elements of the site through a reproduction of the mural somewhere and salvaging building materials in the new construction. So regarding the amendment and the REPC, in your packet you have the real estate purchase contract that was negotiated between between staff of the administration and the buyer back in February of this year. That agreement was subject to board approval, which is what we're doing here tonight. There was also an amendment that was attached to the packet. That amendment is being replaced with the substitute amendment that I've just handed out. And what that does is it actually simplifies the amendment. It takes out a number of things that we were considering but realized that they are really premature to bring forward at this point. And so what we're asking for your consideration tonight for is just approval of the REPC as it is currently constituted there, as well as the substituted First Amendment. The purchase price is $1.8 million for a reduced 6.84 acre site. In the First Amendment, you'll see that the main thing that it does is extends the shovel-ready deadline to May 30th. That allows us to continue the work of remediation to get the site clean and shovel-ready. And once that takes place, then they have 40 days to do some additional due diligence with the regulatory bodies if necessary, and then closing can take place after that. So that is the request as it stands now. Is there any questions about that?
Chair? Yep. What's the timeline for the EPA to finish their work and get off site?
You can consider EPA substantially complete now. They have some solid waste that they're dealing with that they can't quite package up and get to the dump site that they're using because of logistics. So they've demobilized 98% of their workforce and their equipment. There's 2 people on site now, and the pits that this waste is being solidified in needs working on a daily basis. So they're doing that until they have clearance to package it up and move it out. And then that removal work is finished. Very successful.
Brandon, can you clarify for me? Did you say so the First Amendment that you passed out, that we're considering the Rep C in the packet plus the amendment tonight?
Correct.
And the amendment only amends the deadline date for shovel ready?
It does 2 things. It amends the shovel ready date. It also adds a contingency that in the event that the RDA is not able to produce a no further action letter, then there is no sale. There's no deal.
Item 3 in the. The letter. What's the letter that's referenced in item 3? Is that the letter? Let's see. That's what's in item 2, I guess.
The letter is a capitalized term, which means the no further action letter.
There it is. It's in item 2. Okay. Our council members, you guys tracking on that?
I'm having such a great night with stuff right in front of me.
I know. It's a night of substitutes and reconsiderations, etc. So basically, the seller or the buyer has a contingency that if the DEQ does not issue that letter, that they can get out of this agreement. Is that what that means?
More importantly, us, yes.
Both seller and buyer.
Right, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
Why is that more importantly?
Well, instead of the deal being assured and the lack of the letter being produced a default, it's now a contingency. And so that helps us in the event that we can't control this uncontrollable process. We're working with 2 government entities that have their own process. And so if we're unable to produce that no further action letter, which the buyer is going to need in order to do what they want to do, then it's not a condition of default. It's a contingency.
But it certainly benefits the city as well.
Absolutely.
And the board.
And we felt, with review of the legal team tonight, we felt that was something that was important to include. And some of the other things that were part of the original First Amendment weren't fully baked. And so we made some revisions that I think helps our position, which means we will be coming back to you shortly when those items that were in the First Amendment have had time to ripen, and we'll come back with a Second Amendment, which will talk about a reduction in purchase price and the clarification of the infrastructure development that surrounds the property.
I like your farmerisms.
Can you clarify on you said at which time we'll be talking about a reduction in the purchase price and a clarification on the infrastructure?
Right. So the reduction in purchase price is due to the fact that we're reducing the size of the lot potentially.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. For the riparian zone. Okay. But I did have a question after the work session about the infrastructure needs. Can you clarify or expand on what the road construction need was, or it will be?
Right. So that's one of the reasons why we pulled it out, is because we don't have all the information, but Exchange Road is in a condition that would not be supportive of this type of a development.
Can you go to the
Yeah. So
for me?
everyone sees the hand.
Yeah.
So Exchange Road has been fully improved up to about this point right here, but the remaining part of Exchange Road that goes over the bridge and then dead ends down here at the bottom of this map is not improved with concrete, asphalt, and major utilities. So in order to serve this property, those utilities and that work has to be completed in order to make this work. The purchase price, the $1.8 million purchase price, is a full price, is a price that reflects a fully developed site. Meaning, for instance, this site here was purchased at $5.50. That's our most expensive site to date that we've sold in this area. This site, given the $1.8 million that's in the agreement at the 6.84 acres, that's $6.04. So it's our highest priced site, but it's considering that it's fully developed. So what we're working on is an agreement that would escrow the proceeds of sale that we would receive to then be funneled back into the improvements of this road.
Oh, okay. I was going to ask where it was going to come from. So
yeah.
How much is that CIP that we passed in the budget that provides for infrastructure related to CED projects?
100,000.
100,000?
Mm-hmm.
That's not going to cut it. Okay, thanks.
Might do the gas line.
Yeah,
maybe.
Any other questions for Mr. Cooper?
And aren't they trying to get it in under a opportunity zone? Does this qualify for that then?
Yeah, again, with everything, there's a timing consideration. The developer is very anxious to get on sure footing. We've been looking at this deal since February, and for lots of reasons, we're here now today. But we're really a few months behind their schedule, which means that by taking action tonight, they actually have a real deal that they can rely on, that allows them to now go out to their investment partners under the opportunity zone deadlines. It also allows them to go to architects and engineers to start to work through some of the site issues that needs to be addressed.
So what happens if they can't acquire the funding through their partners in that?
Well, if they're not able to meet the terms of the deal, then they would be in default.
And the property comes back to the city?
The property would never leave the hands of the city.
You got to pay for what you get.
Right.
Anything else for Mr. Cooper? I've got a couple more questions. So the infrastructure costs, how much do you anticipate that to be? I know that we're talking about the 1.7, potentially a reduced amount escrowing back into covering those costs, but how much do you think that cost is?
So the purchase price would potentially be reduced to 1.7 from 1.8. And that's because we would carve off the bottom of this site to create the right-of-way land. And then
that wasn't for the riparian, that was for the right-of-way.
Right, the riparian's already carved out,
Yeah, okay.
but the additional carve-out would be for the Exchange Road right-of-way. And then right now we're working on budgets anywhere from $1 million to $1.5 million on those infrastructure improvements. Power is still a consideration that needs to be looked at. We're working with the gas company right now, so there's still lots of things that need to be fleshed out, and so we felt it was important to pull those off and bring them to you when they're a lot more solidified.
So is the type of road surface and the load, I'm not an engineer, so bear with me, but also the capacity of the utilities, et cetera, would those be needed for any development to occur there, or is it this specific development has an increased requirement?
I think in Exchange Road and Stockman Way they've both been built to greater standards, so they are more of an industrial type of a road. The overlay pavement is thicker and the base is thicker. I don't necessarily think that the other utilities are any bigger than what you would see in a typical in a business park like this. There's an 8 meg power backbone that's similar to what BDO has. There's a 24-inch water line that serves this park, but that's not specifically for the park. So I think it's consistent with other business parks and wouldn't require more than what you would typically see. There's no user that is here now or that we anticipate to come that would have such a large demand for power or water or natural gas that would require us to do something outside of that norm.
Okay. That's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
How about the cost of demolition is apparently way more than we had budgeted by at least double or more?
Triple.
Triple?
Yeah.
What's going on with that?
So as we set the budget when we were in the acquisition phase and we tried to predict what this whole process was going to take and cost, we had a demo contractor come. And again, at that point, we weren't able to get into the building and assess the contents inside. And so they gave us what's called a windshield budget, and we padded that with some contingency given the fact that we knew that there was a ton of stuff inside. And then we looked at what other demolition contracts that we had recently done were costing us. And so with that, we kind of looked at a budget number of $500,000. So we publicly solicited this bid. We had, I think, 5 bidders, and the low bid was 1.5. But that does include about $175,000 for the regrade of the riverbank. So it's essentially about 1.4, which would put us about $900,000 over our original estimation.
So what is it specifically that's caught us by surprise now that
I think the contents of the inside of the building, and once people were able to actually walk through it and see it. One thing that we are working on that isn't totally solidified yet is that through the work of the EPA and our companion work in clearing some of the building so that they can get to the remediation work, we have reduced the contents of the interior dramatically. So we're working with the low bid contractor to reassess the building and to see if that quantity of material that they're transporting to the dump goes down, which it will, and to see if we can get a price reduction. And how much that is, I don't know.
Okay, so where would that almost $1 million that's not budgeted, where would that come from?
We're working on a budget amendment now, so that will be forthcoming. We haven't awarded the full contract to the development company. We've only awarded a partial contract within the amount of money that we actually have previously appropriated, which is about $1 million. So we would be coming to the council and the board for a budget amendment to appropriate the additional funds.
Do you know where that would come from? Where it's proposed to come from?
I'm not sure.
BDO lease revenue.
Where?
We have the budget amendments, and it's proposed to come from BDO lease revenue to the city to RDA.
So I saw it on the tentative schedule that you sent out in a few weeks, I think, right? Okay. Then final question, design controls. I liked the idea that we talked about where
does that give you a headache?
The building honors the mural.
Mm-hmm.
And you talked on the south side that potentially that could be wrapped in windows, and people that drove by could still drive past it and see through the windows into an interior mural replica that honors the history. Does our ability with the design controls that are in the contract allow us to ensure that that happens?
Sure. I mean, based on your decision tonight, you can place any conditions that you wish to place on it. In this case, the development company is 100% willing to look at how we honor the history of the site. This is a depiction of what they've come up with thus far in terms of working with their architect. That's the smokestack that exists. That's some brick that's been salvaged. The form and shape and style of the building has been designed to take the significant cues of the Swift building and build it into it without replicating it. So I think they're going in the right direction. What has been talked about, to your point, is opening up some of this view area, and instead of plastering a Swift mural on the side of the building on the exterior, again, to kind of replicate what is currently there, we're looking at doing what we've proposed to do in the Exchange building, and that is build an interior lobby that would be a public easement, essentially, that would allow folks to come and go in the lobby during business hours And in that lobby, the mural could be replicated on a small scale. And then in cooperation with our museum and Weber State University, we could then display artifacts that were significant to the SWIFT operation. And that's a way for not only the employees of the site to have a little bit of understanding of where they're at and the history of that site, but also as people come to the river, the new kayak park, hopefully to recreate at the bike park, that they can not only visit the exchange building, but they can walk the trails and see interpretive signage of what existed there at the stockyards, and then come over to the SWIFT building and see the interior of that lobby. So it could be a kind of this little tour that we're contemplating putting together.
Yeah, as I've thought about tonight's decision, to me, I agree with you that the significance of the building has a lot to do with the skyline and you know, seeing the structure when you enter town. It's just become kind of iconic to the entrance of Ogden. And so for me, I feel a lot better about a decision that incorporates something like that. And the height of this building, you mentioned the scale. Is the height of this proposed building or the concept, is it about the same as the current
It would be a little bit lower, probably by a story, but it would be still prominent.
Okay.
The scale of this would be almost double the scale of the building that is there now. So this is 120,000 square feet flat.
Yeah.
And so the SWIFT building now is more voluminous, and so it would still have a pretty good footprint.
Okay. So how can we ensure that something like that happens? I don't want to put a requirement in place that hamstrings their creative ability to do that. But can these design controls give me the comfort to know that something like that will occur?
Right. So this is a building that they rendered. So it shows their interest in doing what we want them to do, and we've had a really good collaborative experience thus far. Okay. And I see that continuing. So there's nothing that tells me now that our interests are not aligned.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I think that's an important issue to capture that historical aspect of the building.
Yeah.
It's been there a long time, and it reflects not only Ogden City, but also the west side of Ogden. And I think it's necessary for us to be looking at how we can replicate that type of a situation.
Yeah, I also think about that location down the road as we envision what that area will become. Mm-hmm. I mean, with the work that we're contemplating on the kayak park, with the restaurants there and increased usage, I see that becoming a really high visibility area.
Oh yeah,
super high use in the river, and as those people are using the river, I want to know that we are considering a development that looks as good as the location is and will become, right? So that people aren't kayaking next to something that doesn't. You know what I mean?
Right. I think, again, the alignments there, part of what we designed the whole trackline area to be is a headquarters site, so that we're not just getting tilt-up buildings with random businesses inside of them with no identity. So everything that we've done thus far, the Ogden Zone property, Envy, Enable Utah, and now this property, those are all headquarter buildings. And so there's an element of pride that these companies are taking in building these buildings that you wouldn't see in a different scenario. So I think we're there. And with the river improvements this is a concept drawing, again, this isn't approved, but this line represents the river improvements and what that would look like. And so they would have a wrought iron fence potentially that would bridge the public area to the private area with another open space there. And that would create a really good buffer between the river and the building, which then would create an appealing environment for those coming to the kayak park. So the building hasn't been stuffed up against the river and towering over the side. It's been pushed back to the east as much as possible for that reason that you've mentioned.
Okay.
Is it possible to go into more of a green type of a building when they go through their structures? That they could incorporate some of that into their building?
So this is a little bit different. There's no incentive being offered, and the zoning doesn't require that. So aside from just a request, there isn't a lot of leverage room, so to speak, that we have as an agency to require that.
It'd be a nice emphasis toward that aspect. Brandon, what about tax increment? Have you covered? Can you talk a little bit about that? What tax increment is being leveraged here?
So this is in the Trackline Economic Development Area, and right now all of the tax increment that's generated in that 121 acre district is contracted to go to the developer of this area, which is currently OBE Vision LLC. And so any tax increment generated from this site would go to them to help offset the cost of the Trackline area.
Do you know how much is going to go to them then?
Right now, it's
Who's them?
OBE Vision LLC. There's no tax increment in this proposed deal.
Okay.
This is purely a real estate transaction.
All right.
Okay, thanks for, those were the questions that have been kind of eating at me since last week, so appreciate it. Any other questions for Mr. Cooper before we take action?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Seems like our dialogue today would have been more of a dialogue that would happen in a work session. Am I wrong in that perception?
No, but I think it's okay if the work session sparks additional contemplation. Are you talking about my questions?
No, I mean our discussion with Brandon today.
I think it's okay to talk about here as well, either way.
But it seems like those questions would have been flushed out in more of a work session type of situation.
Yeah, or not, either way. I don't know. I hope I didn't catch you by surprise with any of those questions. I've been on the phone a lot with people on this proposal, so they're giving me a lot to reflect on.
Yeah.
So
I think it's important for us to look at this project because it's probably the cornerstone of that development in the west side of Ogden. So.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay. We will be accepting public input on this item. If you care to address the board on this specific item, now is your chance.
The real reason I'm here. So, no, I just like having been part of an acquisition, surplus property sale, demolition of the former Ogden City Mall. I see this and celebrate it in the sense that it had its use. And obviously the contaminations and other things that have been remediated. But I'd like to just simply request that in addition to the oral histories and the mitigation aspects of this would be a wiki page so that people can add to it and possibly administered by the city so they can just double check and fact verify. 1968 Standard Examiner had just a full page on the economic boon of Ogden. And we processed roughly 1,100 to 1,500 sheep a day for a 3-month season, typically incorporating 500,000 sheep in a 3-month season. So obviously the gore side of that, of the reality of, yes, we butchered that many sheep. And it was part of the stockyards as part of that aspect. But it talked about the economic boon. James Clarence Armstrong was a sheep herder. He built a little-known house that's now the David Eccles Mansion. And his empire was started with sheep herding. And so I think that aspect of our agricultural roots is very significant to us being in this community. Even the beautiful historic City Hall that David Eccles built, they stood at the dedication and said, in 50 years, a grander building will replace this building. And so they already had enough foresight to see what we were going to become. And I think that same aspect we lose so much. We have no agricultural zoning in Ogden. What? How did this happen? How did we get so detached from our roots that we didn't say, okay, well, what are we going to annex? Okay, well, how about we annex and keep it agricultural instead of business? How about we do land trusts? How about we do something that says, here's at least, something that shows us that history. The headquarters and warehousing, how we provided them, Atwater, with the possibility of rail access, obviously through conjunction with the railroads, because that's a connection. And if that industrial park can have rail load and unload, then that much more greenhouse gases aren't pumped by these semi trucks that are pulling in and out of there to warehouse something, because the trains are already through. And so I would like to see aspects of that. With regards to preservation, even if just that little front building that looks like an administrative building can be reevaluated and say, hey, Atwater, we like this and we like the actual box staggered look instead of just a cookie cutter box. Yes, we appreciate the infill brick and it complementing the neighborhood, but can we do some of those things? So I'd like to see that aspect, the scale and variation of the buildings. We did it with Twin Rivers and the Boyle Furniture Warehouse. And so I don't see why we can't ask the same thing for this development. Thanks,
Travis. I think Travis would be a good wiki contributor.
That's what I was going to say.
If that's a thing, I don't know if I use it right, but it's a good idea. So, okay, anybody else care to address the council on this item? Or the board, I should say. Sorry.
Nate Harbordson, 2556 Washington Boulevard. Appreciate the opportunity to get up here. I have been working, I'll just give you a little history on how I've been involved as a real estate broker in the Trackline project with Ogden City, since 2011. And I really wanted to stress something that's happening here. Something that he just talked about, the economic boom, the economic history of the stockyards, the track line, everything out there. What's happening right now is this is giving us the opportunity to catapult into another economic boom for Ogden City. It's really neat. Time is of the essence a little bit right now with this real estate purchase contract. I just want to stress that we have a really great opportunity with an industry mogul that's coming from a different state. They are offering opportunity for our city, job opportunity, really good job opportunity. They're bringing a huge investment here. And, this isn't just all about the dollars either. This is about the people that are going to have the jobs, that are actually going to be able to work down there and experience the lifestyle that we're trying to bring to this part of Ogden and enjoy the river. So one of the things that I just wanted to mention is the fact that, we've got a developer here that's backed by a company that wants to bring opportunity. They didn't just come and do this yesterday. They've been working on this for approximately a year. They've been very patient. They do have time restrictions. The opportunity zone that you brought up is a huge factor to that. And it's something that as a city and as people in the city working, we're constantly trying to bring that to the city. So I just wanted to point that out to the council. Not that it's just to create some urgency that, when you have somebody captive, we've worked so hard out there to get these types of industry to come to Ogden and be part of our community. I want to make sure that we take that into consideration, that, we do have to act sometimes when the iron's hot. So I appreciate your time and everything you guys are doing.
Thanks for comments.
Thanks.
Aaron Robertson, representing the property to the west of this. We are the financial backing and have been involved in these last few lot sales taking place that were just referenced by Brandon. From our standpoint, we'd like to really say congratulations to Brandon for the work that he's been doing here. He indicated on this that, the number of years that they've got in vision on this project. And when I say project, I'm not talking the Atwater project, but the track line and your staff and community has tried to get involved there. We are huge fans of what's taking place there. As a personal note, I love historic buildings. I continue to try and get my investors to do projects involved in historic buildings. It's very challenging to get them to work out and pencil. And while this one, we looked at that greedily for some time to do something on this particular site. And to be perfectly honest, we were scared to death of it. That there is so much to be done there. And so I think with what's been proposed, we're fully supportive. I think the ideas of taking some of the historical nature of the building and implementing in the new building, I think is a great plan. As long as your developer and your new tenant can afford some of those extravagant things, I think it's awesome. So very supportive of what's been done here. I think your staff has done a great job juggling a lot of complicated issues here, and so we're just here in support of what you have going on.
Thank you.
My name is Mike Eddy. I'm with PPC Commercial, and I represent Atwater Infrastructure Partners. The reason, let me kind of just give you a little history on how this all started. When I was in college, I was actually a college football player, and I played at University of Texas, El Paso. When Ron McBride got the job at Weber State, I didn't hesitate for a minute to take that offer. When he called to see if I'd be interested in transferring. I came in, it was the same year that was actually his first year, if you guys remember. And I was actually one of his top transfers. Came in as a preseason all favorite for everything. The day before the first game, the NCAA came in and said, "You can't play because the only reason why you transferred is because of football." I was on track to graduate. I was on track to do everything right, and a potential NFL career was just yanked from me like nothing. I did go play in the Arena League after that, but to say that's better than your chances at the NFL, just you can't really compare the two. So during my time finishing school at Weber, I just really kind of I lost myself and tried to figure out my purpose in life again, without that possibility. And as years went by, I kind of bounced from one industry to the next until I kind of found my place in life. And I finally got to a point where I got my real estate license, and I decided, hey, it's time to take a run at doing something that you can be proud of, that the community can be proud of, that everybody can be proud of, and say that you actually did something that contributed to the better of the community. So when I got into commercial real estate about 5 to 6 years ago, I started working with some of the personnel here in Ogden, because I always look back at this place as what could I have done with that opportunity other than play football, to be in Ogden. And as I worked with economic development, I learned the plans that they had in place and learned what they wanted to do. And I felt that what I could offer would help with what they were trying to achieve. And so I took it upon myself to work with personnel such as Terrence Brad and Brandon and the mayor and everybody to understand what I needed to do to make this happen. So I went down to California on my own dime, stayed with a friend in San Diego. I played football at a junior college in called Golden West College in Huntington Beach, California, so I already knew the market. I went down there, and I'd say it took me about 6 months of just door-to-door knocking, just selling, like going from one networking group to the next networking group to the next, and constantly being slapped in the face, being told that you're not wanted there. Nobody wants to go to Utah. Nobody, that's what I heard over and over and over again until I finally found these people. And it took me about 6 months till I finally found them. Once I found them, then it became a different
Just need you to wrap it up for the
step, okay? And all I'm going to say is if it wasn't for the help of Nate Harbison, if it wasn't for the help of Aaron Robertson, and if it wasn't for the help of Brandon Cooper and everybody that's been involved, we would not be standing here right now. It's been a team effort, and we've made it happen. We've got it this far, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Hardy McFadden. I represent a consultant to Atwater, and I'd also like to echo my feelings of congratulations on this wonderful opportunity. As I've come to Ogden just recently from the Seattle area, I've already gained a love for the Ogden culture and the Ogden community, and working through the Ogden Business Exchange area and the Swift Building area, I see incredible potential, and I think this is a fantastic opportunity. As I see what is a hallmark of successful growth and development for an area, one major word comes to mind, and that's accessibility. And as the town continues to move west toward the tracks, and as we develop more business opportunities on the west, we're bringing those jobs to our residents, and not only jobs, but jobs that are with companies that provide a better tax base, that help enrich and enliven our cultural base. And so that's my perspective, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Barney.
Anybody else left? Okay. Any comments from the council after that input? I guess I'll just say that I appreciate the teamwork that you guys have mentioned. I appreciate the congratulatory nature of the moment that we're in. I also hope, I'm glad you heard the conversation prior, because like Travis said, I think, it's a building that's past its useful life. Unfortunately, it's had some hard years, right? And I hope in your time that you've been here from Seattle that you've recognized the part of our culture is our grit and our, we love to look back and remember our history, but we clearly want to look forward. And as Travis mentioned, 500,000 head of sheep were slaughtered and butchered in this facility. That's a lot of blood that ran down that river for a lot of years. And now we're looking at a kayak park where people recreate in that same water. It's renewed in its vigor, and I'm not qualified to design a facility that matches that vision for our future, but my comments are that I hope that you guys put pen to paper and come up with something that we're going to be really proud of, that the people that are kayaking in that stream are looking up and saying, man, nowhere else can you come and have accessibility to that opportunity and have the outdoor amenity paired with the opportunity for, restaurants and employment, et cetera. So that's where my comments are coming from. If I have confidence that will happen, it helps me make this decision today. So appreciate that. Okay. I'll entertain action on the item.
So Chair Nadolski,
Yeah.
just make it clear, I did send up some motion language.
Thank you.
Hopefully everybody got that. It was like 6:27.
Man.
Today or yesterday?
Today.
This morning?
Okay. Thank you, Janine, for doing that. Boy, it's been one of those nights. Everybody see that?
Yeah.
Language?
You want a motion?
I do.
So I move that we accept the substitute First Amendment to the Atwater LLC real estate purchase contract.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion by...
People are a little punchy tonight.
We have a motion by Board Member Heyer, second by Board Member Blair to accept the substitute First Amendment to the Atwater LLC real estate purchase contract. This is a voice vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That substitute passes.
And then I would move that we adopt Resolution 2019-16, authorizing the real estate purchase contract with Atwater LLC with the substitute First Amendment.
I second it.
We have a motion to adopt the resolution 2019-16, authorizing the real estate purchase contract with Atwater LLC with the first substitute amendment included, and that is by Board Member Heyer, seconded by Board Member Stevens, this is a roll call vote.
Board Member Heyer.
Aye.
Board Member Lopez. Board Member Stevens.
Aye.
Board Member White.
Aye.
Board Member Blair.
Aye.
Chair Nadolski.
Aye. That passes. I didn't see Board Member Lopez step out. Sorry about that.
He turned into a pumpkin.
Did he? Okay. I think all of us are.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for all your work on that, you guys. Comments from the executive director?
Yeah, real quickly. When Cooper brought this project, the entire project area into our office, and we toured that, looked at the Swift building, looked at the stockyards, looked at all the challenges that were down there, we thought there was no way. So huge props to you, Brandon, for your vision and bringing together these kinds of partnerships to make something that looked on paper to be exceedingly difficult. Appreciate your tenacity and grit to go and then get that done. And this does not happen without you as development partner. So we appreciate your optimism and what's happening here, and we hope to continue that. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you. Comments from board members?
Maybe I'll start. I'm glad you mentioned Weber State and Ron McBride. I imagine that was an experience that you'd never forget. And that's why I wear a purple tie. I went to Weber State and I grew up here in Ogden. I'm associated with the Swift building. I've seen that throughout my 39 years here. But there's two opportunities that we have. Number one, it's a historical aspect. And we need to preserve that type of a situation. We need to let the people know that, yes, there was a Swift building, but we have to do it in a way that it enhances the historical aspect and the history of it, because it is part of Ogden. It is part of the viaduct. It is part of the stockyards. It was part of the West Ogden in that area. The other aspect is environmental friendly. If there's anything we can do that would enhance our opportunities of using the environment and protecting the resources that we have. Travis talked about using rail. That's a great opportunity for that company to develop their products by using rail. And it's access right to the rail yards. But I'm thinking of maybe solar or things like that, things that could enhance the river that's right next to it. And so those are the two aspects that I think are very crucial for this project in developing it, is the historical and the environmental friendly. And you that are associated with that water have that opportunity to suggest that and say, hey, can we do this? And can we develop this type of a program into your building? And it'll save them money in the long run, but also we can use it as a promotional aspect, saying this building is moving forward in the environmental aspect of it. The other aspect is that I want to thank Brandon for your opportunity here of seeing what can happen. This is a great opportunity for the west side of the city. And if we didn't take that opportunity, then it may not to develop what we want to develop in the long run. This is not what we see happens today in the present. It's what's going to happen in the future, in the 40 and 50 years from now, hopefully. But I think those are the two elements that I wanted to stress, is that.
Thank you. Comments from other board members?
Chair Nadolski, I learned that a few weeks ago that I'm probably the only one of us that's ever been in that building. And that was for about 10 or 15 minutes. But I did grow up with several people that worked there. They were butchers, etc., that worked there. And so it was a viable part of our community for a lot of years. That season is now past. This new season is starting again, thanks to Brandon and many, many others. Those of you who have had some vision, that we love visionaries that come and have great ideas and the moxie to get behind it and make it work. I'm eager to see what will happen down there for the next several generations. I'm sure it'll be something that contributes to our fabric and people will be talking about in 100 years.
That was a perilous 10 minutes. We're glad you're still with us.
I know. It was kind of scary then.
Anyone else?
That was back in the late 70s. So.
Yeah. Anybody else? Comments? Okay. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So adjourned. So moved.
Motion by Board Member Heyer, second by Board Member White to adjourn. This is a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thanks, you guys.